Chapter 629. You better think carefully. The dean was shocked and furious, but he still maintained his greatest restraint. Killing an old man might not be a big deal. If you kill the despairing River City Dao Academy, you will be making an enemy of the entire Zhuang country. You will even be making an enemy of the Dao sect. It sounds very serious. Jiang Wang was very engrossed in his role. His voice was extremely heartless. Therefore, I advise you to reach an agreement with me as soon as possible. Don't let me face such serious consequences. You, the dean of the Wangjiang City Dao Academy, said angrily, shameless, arrogant, and ignorant. Do you think you can escape from such a great sin? No matter how strong you are, can you escape from Minister Du's imminent skyline? No matter how strong so near, yet worlds apart is, can he predict where I am? I, Zhang Linchuan, treat the world as my home. Du Hui, please go to imminent skyline. Jiang Wang was unmoved. 5 breaths left. The dean closed his eyes in pain, his heart in turmoil. On one side was his life's work, and on the other side was all the disciples of the entire Taoist Academy. Jiang Wang was still counting down. 3 breaths. The dean gritted his teeth and was about to speak. At that moment, a voice sounded not far away. Which expert has come to my Wangjiang City Dao Academy? This voice was stubborn and firm, like a stubborn rock, leaving a deep impression. Jiang Wang thought about it seriously. When he saw the dean's anxious gaze, he instantly understood. It was Fu Baosong. Fu Baosong, who should have been cultivating in the County Dao Academy or even the National Dao Academy, was actually in the City Dao Academy. He had also sensed the spread of the illusion flowers. That made him even more confident. The dean of the Wangjiang City Dao Academy might not choose the other disciples in the academy, but he would definitely not ignore Fu Baosong. This was because his unique mystic technique had only been passed down to Fu Baosong, treating him as his legacy. This was a father-son relationship. Jiang Wang deliberately exposed his aura, and Fu Baosong rushed over. 3 days ago, Fu Baosong opened the Heaven and Earth Gate and officially stepped into the soaring dragon realm. He could already enter the National Dao Academy to cultivate. After he completed all the handover, he immediately chose to return to Wangjiang City to report the good news. He was brought up by his father alone. He had been stubborn since he was a child. After he grew up, his relationship with his uncles and brothers was very bad. After his father passed away a few years ago, he simply cut off all contact with them. The only person he cared about in Wangjiang City was the dean of the Chengdao Academy. Ever since he entered the Dao Academy's outer sect, the dean had always taken good care of him. After he entered the inner sect, he even taught him everything he knew and regarded him as a successor. To him, the old dean was both a teacher and a father figure. When he returned to Wangjiang City, he naturally stayed in the Chengdao courtyard. Tonight, he was doing his evening class when he suddenly felt that something was wrong. He sensed the existence of the illusory flower. He stood out at the first moment, both as a deterrent and as a warning. In his opinion, as one of the only 2 soaring dragon realm cultivators in the entire Wangjiang City Dao Academy, he was duty-bound to face the troubles of the Dao Academy. After that, he discovered that the strange aura fluctuation came from the dean's quiet room. He was even more anxious, and he circulated his Dao energy and flew over. The place where he lived was not far from the dean's quiet room, so he arrived in a flash. When he arrived in front of the door, he had already completed his hand seals and made many preparations. Just as he was about to kick the door open and rush in, the door suddenly opened. Fu Baosong subconsciously wanted to release his Dao technique, but his hands suddenly tightened. Then, his Dao energy was scattered, and his entire body was pulled into the quiet room by a strong force. Bang! The door was tightly shut. The entire process lasted less than 2 breaths of time. It was just the door opening and closing. Fu Baosong's Dao energy had already been scattered, and he was thrown beside the dean of Wangjiang City's Dao Academy. Jiang Wang, who was wearing a mountain ghost mask, sat upright in front of them. Fu Baosong was subdued without any resistance. The first thing he did when he fell to the ground was to look at the old dean. "Teacher, are you all right? How are you?" The dean looked at him silently and turned to Jiang Wang. He gritted his teeth and said, "You are ruthless. I admire you. You flatter me." Jiang Wang had the self-awareness of a villain. He chuckled and said, "So, do you choose to continue?" "What choice?" Fu Baosong asked from the ground. "I played a game with your teacher, a game of killing," Jiang Wang explained patiently. "I hope you can give me the rotten with technique. Otherwise, I'll kill one person every 30 breaths of time until the entire City Dao Academy is wiped out." Fu Baosong was silent for a while before he got up and said, "I'll go get a pen and paper." Jiang Wang knew that Fu Baosong knew the rotten with technique. He had planned to try it with Fu Baosong if he couldn't get it from the dean of Wangjiang City's Dao Academy. However, he had seen this person's bad temper at the Three Cities Dao discussion. He didn't have much confidence, so he had only used him as a backup. Jiang Wang was a little surprised that he was so decisive in compromising. For a moment, his gaze moved back and forth between Fu Baosong and the dean of Wangjiang City's Dao Academy. The dean only said bitterly, "Baosong's decision is my decision." This was the dean's quiet room. Fu Baosong was naturally familiar with the layout. He quickly found a pen and paper and began to grind the ink seriously. Jiang Wang couldn't help but ask, "This is your teacher's unique secret technique. It's his life's work. It has always been your trump card. Are you handing it over so easily?" Fu Baosong's hands were very steady. As he ground the ink, he said, "Human lives are more important than Dao techniques." Jiang Wang was silent. Fu Baosong quickly ground the ink, took the brush, and began to record the rotten with technique. For a moment, the quiet room was silent. The dean and Jiang Wang didn't move. Only the tip of the brush moved on the paper. "Done." After Fu Baosong finished writing, he blew the ink dry and handed the paper with the rotten wood technique to Jiang Wang. "You can check it." Jiang Wang read it briefly and knew that it was correct. The rotten wood mantra was, of course, an original Dao technique. It was the dean's accidental flash of inspiration, but with Jiang Wang's ability that was much higher than theirs, it was impossible for Fu Baosong to do anything to the Dao technique. Jiang Wang put away the paper and thought for a while. In the end, he said, "Actually, even if you don't give it to me, I won't kill anyone." Fu Baosong didn't say that he didn't believe him. He only said, "I can't gamble with their lives." Jiang Wang suddenly felt a little ashamed. In this cultivator who had just broken through to the soaring dragon realm, he saw a kind of morality and perseverance. This was a true gentleman. Jiang Wang stood up and looked at the dean. "My initial condition is still valid." As he spoke, he took out 2 small booklets he had prepared. One recorded the sea of flowers, and the other recorded the crown of thorns. He gently placed them on the chair he had just sat on. "You and your disciple can both learn." The dean didn't say anything. Only Fu Baosong said, "Your Excellency, you've achieved your goal. Can you leave now?" Jiang Wang didn't take it to heart. He only said, "There aren't many people like you left. I hope you can live well and go far in the future." As soon as he finished speaking, he disappeared. Chapter 630. Seeing the mysterious man in the mountain ghost mask leave, Fu Baosong muttered, "He seems to know me." The old dean sighed and picked up the 2 Dao techniques left on the chair. He said, "His name is Zhang Linchuan. Do you remember him?" Fu Baosong thought for a moment and said, "When Maplewood City was still around, there was a senior brother in Maplewood City who used lightning techniques called Zhang Linchuan. In the end, he lost to senior brother Lin Zhengren." The dean glanced at his disciple. He was actually very clear about Lin Zhengren's attitude towards Fu Baosong. He also knew that Fu Baosong had never gotten along with the Lin family. However, Fu Baosong would never say anything about these people behind their backs. He would always address Lin Zhengren as his senior brother. This child never lacked the courage to face the dark side head-on, but he never had the ruthlessness to backstab others. It was precisely these details that made him choose to pass down his life's work to Fu Baosong and not Lin Zhengren, who was stronger and more talented. These thoughts only flashed through his mind. The dean of Wangjiang City's Dao Academy said, That's impossible. I know Zhengren's strength very well. Even the current Zhengren is far from being as strong as this person just now. Moreover, the entire Maplewood City has sunk in the netherworld and not a single blade of grass grows. How could Zhang Linchuan survive? Thinking of Maplewood City that had turned into a ghost town overnight, Fu Baosong felt sorrowful and casually speculated. Maybe it's an alias. Maybe it's just the same name. I hope it's just the same name. The dean sighed with an emotion that Fu Baosong did not understand. Then he placed the two books in his hands in Fu Baosong's hands. Take it and study it carefully. Fu Baosong looked up at him. Teacher, the dean patted his shoulder and stopped him from rejecting. My talent is limited. This is the end of my life. You have a better future and are more worthy of these Tao techniques. Use the fastest time to master them. This way, the Rottenwood technique won't be handed over for nothing. This is an order. Fu Baosong had been stubborn since he was young. When faced with some things, even the dean of Wangjiang City's Tao Academy might not be able to persuade him. However, he would definitely listen to the dean's orders, no matter how unwilling he was. Fu Baosong held the two Taoist techniques tightly in his hands. Baosong will work hard. The dean nodded in relief and said, Now, go and ring the courtyard bell and ask for help from the experts in the entire Wangjiang City. Teacher, Fu Baosong hesitated for a moment. It's too late to ask for help now. Moreover, if that person is enraged, he'll... Of course, it's too late to ask for help now. However, we must spread the news that the Rottenwood formula has been stolen. Otherwise, if that person does something evil in the future and exposes the Rottenwood method, then you and I will not be able to escape responsibility, no matter what. Oh well, Amos said. Besides, if we ask for help now, we won't be able to do anything to that person. From the way he does things, he's someone with a bottom line. He won't return to the Tao Academy for revenge. Fu Baosong understood the teacher's concerns and nodded. I'll go now. The dean added from behind him. If the city lord and the others come over later, you have to remember, I was the one who gave him the Rottenwood formula. This is my unique Tao technique, and I have the right to make the choice. But in fact, this is the truth. The dean interrupted him very sternly. This is also an order. Allowing an unfamiliar cultivator to snatch away their unique Tao technique was a matter of great importance. If the dean himself handed over his own Tao technique for the safety of the students of the Tao Academy, no one would be able to criticize him. However, if Fu Baosong handed over his Tao technique, it was very likely that others would say that he was afraid of death, and it would be detrimental to his future development in the imperial court. The old dean was taking the blame for himself and shielding his disciple from a storm. After considering all aspects, even his own son would not be more than this. Fu Baosong gritted his teeth and went in the end. The bell of the Chengdao Academy rang 9 times in a row, immediately alarming all the experts in the Wangjiang City region. The Chengdao Academy was the most important place in the entire city region. If anything happened, none of them would be able to escape responsibility. The city lord of Wangjiang City, who was at the Inner Mansion realm, arrived in a flash. The enforcer of Wangjiang City, who was at the peak of the Soaring Dragon realm, also arrived later. Fortunately, the Tao Academy of Wangjiang City did not suffer any substantial losses. It was just that the dean was forced to seize a unique Tao technique. As for the villain who barged into the Chengdao Academy at night, after asking about his approximate strength, the city lord of Wangjiang City had already decided on a plan to deal with this matter. The pursuit had to be carried out. It involved the reputation of the city, but the execution would definitely be loud and small. After all, the other party was at least at the Inner Mansion realm. Not many people in the entire Wangjiang City region could deal with him, and, as the city lord, he couldn't just drop everything and personally pursue that criminal. In any case, the Chengdao Academy did not suffer any substantial losses, and the Chengdao Academy did not have a strong desire to pursue the matter. In a few words, the city lord, the dean of the Chengdao Academy, and the enforcer of the arrest department, the 3 highest echelons of the city region, had already reached a tacit understanding and made arrangements. They issued a warrant, strengthened the night patrols, and sent a few teams of cultivators to put on a show. That was all. Jiang Wang left the Dao Academy of Wangjiang City. He did not feel too happy about completing his goal. Tisk TSK TSK. Jiang Yan's voice sounded in the heavenly palace. Coercion, temptation, coercion. I thought that I was the only one who could do these things. Mock me if you want. Jiang Wang was unmoved. I must take back what the Zhuang state owes me. You're willing to do anything for this. Jiang Wang did not answer his question directly, but said, I didn't lie to them just now. If they still refuse to give it to me when the time is up, I will give up. You still feel guilty. Jiang Yan laughed. Otherwise, you wouldn't have explained it to me. If only that dean was an evil person. That way, no matter how you torture him, even if you destroy his will, you don't have to feel guilty. I have a secret technique that can trigger the evil thoughts in people's hearts. Wait until the subject has done something evil. Then you can deal with him, and your conscience will be at ease. How about it? Do you want to learn it? You clearly have more choices and can become stronger faster. Why are you binding yourself? What standards are you holding yourself to? Who cares? Don't you feel tired living like this? Why don't you let go of yourself? Stronger, easier, and more free. Jiang Yin was especially active tonight and chattered nonstop. The guilt he felt when facing Fu Baosong became a temporary loophole in Jiang Wang's heart. Jiang Yin was keenly aware of this and tried to expand the gap in his mental defenses. During the entire process, he did not use any secret techniques. He only used words to control his emotions. This was because the use of any secret technique at this moment was equivalent to a direct declaration of war. He was not willing to start a soul battle with Jiang Wang now. However, Jiang Wang remained silent. Instead, his eyes became calmer and calmer as he walked silently in Wangjiang City in the night. At this moment, the 9 bells of Wangjiang City's Dao Academy rang for help. Chapter 631. It wasn't hard to guess why the dean of Wangjiang City's Dao Academy rang the bell to ask for help. Jiang Wang immediately understood. He wasn't angry, and there was nothing to worry about. There was no opponent in the entire Wangjiang City that could make him cower, and he had only obtained a mere high-grade B-grade Dao technique. It was impossible for the Zhuang nation to mobilize experts from the capital to hunt him down for such a Dao technique. The rotten wood art was very important to the combat system he had constructed, but it might not be much to others. Instead, the bell calmed his heart and temporarily left Jiang Yan's noise. Walking on the streets of Wangjiang City, there were no other pedestrians in the long night. However, Jiang Wang felt something he hadn't felt in a long time. It had indeed been a long, long time since he had walked in the city of the Zhuang nation. Back then, that youth had resolutely left the country that had given birth to him and raised him. His feelings then and now, they intertwined and converged into a complicated feeling. After walking through a long street, Jiang Wang suddenly looked up. In the startled night sky of Wangjiang City, he saw an acquaintance. It was rare for Lin Zhongrun to return to Wangjiang City. The entire Wangjiang City's Lin family couldn't provide him with any help at all. He had long said that the Wangjiang City's Lin family's business was not worth mentioning to him. He wasn't bragging, but had a clear understanding of himself. He had always known what his strength was and where he could go. Now, the most glorious person in the entire Dao Academy was naturally Zhu Weiwa. Below him were the so-called 6 heroes of the Dao Academy. He, Lin Zhongrun, was among them. Zhu Weiwa was a unique genius. He had long recognized Zhu Weiwa's strength, but he didn't expect him to be even more terrifying than he had imagined. In such a short time, he had already attained the divine power inner mansion. He was the #1 among the younger generation of the Zhuang nation. Speaking of which, that damned place, Maplewood City, had indeed produced talents. Li Jinxiu, who had learned the Dao sword technique from somewhere, had also become one of the 6 heroes of the Dao Academy. His ranking was only 1 place lower than his. During the Dao discussion of the 3 cities, as the champion of the Dao discussion, he only had eyes for Zhu Weiwa. How could he know who Li Jinxiu was? Who would have thought that he would be on par with him now? There was a teacher who once said that the entire Maplewood City region had died, and all the luck had gathered on the survivors. Bearing the luck of a city, bearing the life of a city. That was why Zhu Weiwa was able to soar into the sky. He himself didn't believe it. Zhu Wei's strength was traceable. As soon as he entered the soaring dragon realm, he dared to chase after the heart-devouring demon. He even dared to barge into the unredeemable city with only one spear. Why would such an expert need luck? His body alone was enough to create momentum. However, his disbelief did not prevent him from secretly encouraging the spread of such voices. It was much better to let more people think that Zhu Weiwa had risen from a pile of corpses in Maplewood City than to let people firmly believe that Zhu Weiwa was the peerless Tianjiao of the Zhuang state. At least in the former category, Lin Zhengren still had a chance to compete. No matter how strong or dazzling Zhu Weiwa was, Lin Zhengren, had never felt that he couldn't catch up to him. The path of Tao was long and arduous. Without reaching the final step, who could say for sure who would be able to go further? He needed resources. He needed more resources. Currently, he was at the peak of the soaring dragon realm, while Zhu Weiwa was at the inner palace of the remarkable arts. Both of them still had sufficient resources. What about when they reached the outer palace of the gods? When resources were insufficient, there would definitely be a trade-off. He definitely wouldn't be the one to be trade-off. Currently, the Zhuang state had a large foundation and everything was flourishing. If he wanted to occupy a good position in the Zhuang state in the future, he couldn't just limit his vision to the so-called 6 heroes of the State Academy. In fact, from the beginning to the end, his gaze had always been on Zhu Weiwa. This time, he had returned to Wangjiang City because of Zhu Weiwa. Because the Zhuang state was rapidly growing stronger, the division of benefits between them and the surrounding powers naturally had to be redistributed. For example, some time ago, the Yong state, the Zhuang state, and the Luo state had been in the unredeemable city together with the criminal Lord Huang Jinma to conduct the four-way talks. The representatives of each state were either state ministers or great generals. From this, one could see how high the standards were. When important figures participated in the talks, they couldn't act rashly. Thus, the sparring between the younger generation became a matter of course. Of course, no matter the level of confrontation, the unredeemable city wouldn't participate. What caused the entire Zhuang state to be in an uproar was that in this four-way talks, Zhu Weiwa suppressed the other two states. It was said that it wasn't even a one-on-one sparring. Instead, Zhu Weiwa directly fought against two geniuses of the Yong state and the Luo state. Thus, Zhu Weiwa's return to the Tao Academy this time was especially grand. All the teachers and students of the academy welcomed him outside the academy. Lin Zhengren really didn't want to feel that kind of atmosphere in the Tao Academy. He was afraid that his Tao heart would be suppressed. It would be even worse if he delayed the completion of the soaring dragon realm. Thus, he casually found a reason to temporarily return to Wangjiang City to hide. He didn't expect that not long after returning home, something would happen again. The bell of the Tao Academy in Wangjiang City rang 9 times. Lin Zhengren couldn't help but doubt his luck. He had always cherished his body and wasn't willing to take risks. However, everyone knew that he was in Wangjiang City at this moment. Something had happened in the Tao Academy in the city, so he had to go. He had walked out of the Tao Academy in Wangjiang City. At the crucial moment, he had to show his responsibility. However, he had to go over. As for how to go, he could still consider it. Lin Zhengren controlled his speed. After confirming that the city lord and the deacon had arrived and that the situation was stable, he sped up and rushed over. When he rushed to the Tao Academy, Fu Baosong was sending the city lord and the deacon off. The dean had already returned to the chamber and was not present. Junior brother Fu, what happened? Lin Zhengren flew over and asked with a concerned expression, "Is the dean all right?" He had indeed had a conflict with Fu Baosong. He had even stepped on Fu Baosong's face during the Tao discussion of the 3 cities. However, this didn't stop him from showing kindness. This was because at that time, he was doing it for the overall situation of the entire Wangjiang City Tao Academy. Someone barged into the Tao Academy at night and forcefully took a mystic technique before leaving. Fu Baosong shook his head. Teacher is fine. He didn't like Lin Zhengren very much, but the dean had used the excuse of being injured to recuperate in seclusion to reduce trouble. He had to stand up and represent the Dao Academy. He knew that Lin Zhengren had always held a grudge against the dean for not teaching him the Rottenwood technique, so he vaguely mentioned the name of the mystic technique. Lin Zhengren didn't mind. What impressive mystic technique could the Dao Academy have? The Rottenwood technique that he had once brooded over was no longer in his eyes. Only the mystic techniques in the Dao Academy were qualified to be called mystic techniques. What did the city lord say? He asked. Arrest the criminal and send more people to patrol. But it shouldn't be of much use. This is a mature move. Lin Zhengren nodded. He glanced at the Dao Academy again, but in the end, he didn't have the intention to go in and see the old dean. It's good that he's fine. Send my regards to him. I'll chase after him and investigate. Perhaps I can find some traces. He casually said something perfunctory and turned to leave. As for helping the old dean and participating in the hunt for the criminal, what a joke. He wouldn't even touch such a lower turn and high-risk thing. There was no danger. It was a wasted trip. Lin Zhengren casually flew 2 rounds around Wangjiang City to put on an act before flying back to the Lin family's territory in the east of the city. The current Lin family's patriarch was still his grandfather, and the future patriarch would be his younger brother, Lin Zhengli. He had never taken this foundation seriously. After gaining a foothold in the Dao Academy, what he had to fight for were resources of another level. Of course, in the Lin family, his status was even more aloof. In the past, when Lin Zhengli was angry, he would occasionally dare to talk back to him. Now, he was already obedient and respected him. Without alerting the clan soldiers on night watch, he directly flew back to his own courtyard. What happened in the Dao Academy tonight didn't cause any ripples in his heart. He was just a little annoyed by these irrelevant matters. Everything was annoying. When would he be able to catch up to Zhu Weiwa? Lin Zhengren stood in the courtyard for a while, then quickly adjusted his mood and walked into the house. Were you chasing after me just now? A voice sounded behind him, almost sticking to his back. Lin Zhengren was shocked, and his entire body went numb. Chapter 632. Who was this person? What did he want to do? Lin Zhengren was on high alert, but he did not act rashly. He had been bullied so close, and yet he had not sensed it. This already showed the difference in strength, especially the pressure from the person behind him. It was almost tangible. Lin Zhengren would not do anything risky. He did not circulate any Dao energy to show that he had no intention of resisting. Then his body stiffened as he slowly turned around. Then he saw a person wearing a mountain ghost mask. Fu Baosong had said that the person who broke into the Chengdao Academy at night was wearing a mountain ghost mask. I have no intention of offending you. Lin Zhengren expressed his attitude. I do not know what happened in the Chengdao Academy, and I do not care. But Jiang Wang twisted his voice and said slowly, You were looking for me everywhere just now. I was just acting. I did not put my heart into it. With your strength, you should be able to see clearly. Jiang Wang looked at him faintly. There is no knowing what is in a person's heart. It is hard for me to see clearly. This gaze made Lin Zhengren uneasy. He gritted his teeth. How can you see clearly? Please speak frankly. Jiang Wang laughed. His laughter was very cold. He casually pointed. A fireball shot out, smashing through the courtyard wall and into the night sky, exploding with a bang. Prove it to me, Jiang Wang said. Lin Zhengren's face was ashen white. He tried to control his emotions and calmed his expression. The other's attitude was very clear, and he chose to accept it. The exploding fireball woke up the knight of the Lin clan. Where did it explode? What happened? Quickly go take a look. Lin clansmen rushed over from various courtyards with blades and swords, surrounding the source of the sound, Lin Zhengren's courtyard. Eldest young master. What is it? Who is this person? The Lin clan soldiers are here. Eldest young master, please give the order. At this time, Jiang Wang and Lin Zhengren were standing in the courtyard, both silent. From the collapsed courtyard wall, one could see the two of them facing each other, neither of them doing anything else. The Lin clansmen clamored to support their young master. They did not immediately charge over because Lin Zhongrun did not give the order. The darkness of the night shrouded the two of them in a mysterious aura. Because of this, they couldn't clearly see how stiff Lin Zhongrun's body was and how ugly his expression was. On the other hand, Jiang Wang, who was wearing a mask, looked very calm. Strength determined one's mentality. When Jiang Wang first came to Wangjiang City's Lin family, he had to borrow a gun from Zhu Weiwa before he could leave. Even if he relied on Zhu Weiwa's power, he could only accept Lin Zhongrun's advice. Now that he had come to the Lin clan's land, if he did not speak, Lin Zhongrun did not even have the right to speak. The difference in strength. The Lin clan became noisier and noisier. Soon, another group of people gathered. The leader of the group shouted from afar, "Which blind thief dares to disturb my big brother's peace?" The corners of Jiang Wang's mouth, which was hidden under the mask, curled up slightly. Lin Zhongli's voice. From afar, he began to express his respect and love for his elder brother, as if disturbing Lin Zhongrun's cultivation was worse than digging up the ancestral grave of the Lin family. His words were sincere, and his anger could not be suppressed. Lin Zhongrun opened his mouth, wanting to say something, but Jiang Wang's gaze made him unable to utter a single word. The crowd drew closer. Lin Zhongli squeezed through the clansmen surrounding the courtyard. Accompanied by 2 guards, he strode into the courtyard. After not seeing him for a long time, his complexion was very good. His identity as the future head of the Lin clan made him high-spirited. As the big brother of the 6 heroes of the State Academy, he had some face in the entire Qinghai County. From inside to outside, he exuded confidence and strength. His cultivation had not improved much, only reaching the heavenly cycle realm. Elder brother. He cupped his hands towards Lin Zhongrun. Our Lin clan's experts are all outside. As long as you give the order, they can die for you at any time. He glanced at Jiang Wang, who was wearing a mountain ghost mask, and his expression became domineering and arrogant. Who was this guy hiding his head and showing his tail? In his opinion, Lin Zhongrun, who was at the peak of the soaring dragon realm, was already one of the strongest people in Wangjiang City. He could not think of anyone other than the city lord who could suppress his elder brother. This person hiding his head and showing his tail was obviously not his elder brother's match. This was a good time for him to express his loyalty. He did not ask to completely mend the relationship between the 2 brothers, but he hoped that Lin Zhongrun would remember his younger brother in Wangjiang City in the future. Therefore, he put in extra effort. As soon as he appeared, he had gathered almost all the people in the clan who could fight. But the only response to his solicitude was silence. The man wearing the mountain ghost mask did not speak. Lin Zhongrun also did not speak. This silence was terrifying. Only then did Lin Zhongli notice his elder brother's expression. How was this a confrontation? He was clearly intimidated. How powerful was this person who could intimidate Lin Zhongrun? Lin Zhongli's domineering and arrogant gaze immediately became weak. Elder brother, you deal with it first. I will wait outside for orders at any time, Lin Zhongli said casually, and then decisively retreated. Jiang Wang spoke at this moment. I don't like him, he said to Lin Zhongrun. Lin Zhongrun opened his mouth. My younger brother is too young. It's inevitable that his temperament. Jiang Wang did not say a second sentence. He only used a cold gaze to force him to stop making excuses. Lin Zhongrun's gaze turned ruthless. He turned around and walked towards Lin Zhongli. Anger? Humiliation? Pain? He had all these emotions, but he was tolerant by nature. Before he had absolute confidence, he would definitely not bet his life. Moreover, he had no confidence at all. The 2 of them were not on the same level at all. Seeing Lin Zhongrun gritting his teeth and walking over, Lin Zhongli panicked. Brother, what's wrong? As he retreated, he said in a fluster, Go. 1 person, 1 saber. Surround and kill this sneaky scoundrel. No one is allowed to move. Lin Zhongrun shouted. He gritted his teeth. Don't send yourself to death. The Lin clansmen present looked at each other. In the end, the so-called future clan leader was not as authoritative as Lin Zhongren. No one came forward, because everyone knew that the position of the future clan leader was given to him by Lin Zhongren because he did not care. Brother. Lin Zhongli's voice even sounded like he was about to cry. I'm your younger brother. Lin Zhongren did not respond. He only continued to walk towards him. Lin Zhongli was desperate. He looked at Jiang Wang in a panic and bowed repeatedly. Senior, I've offended you. I've offended you. Please forgive me. Please forgive me. Even Lin Zhongren was forced to kill him. In front of such an opponent, the entire Lin clan definitely had no room to fight back. Lin Zhongli had always been very clear-headed. As he shouted, he fell to his knees with a plop. Senior, you can state your conditions. Any conditions are fine. I can pay a sufficient price for my unintentional offense. Please give me a chance. He began to kowtow repeatedly. Lin Zhongren glanced back at Jiang Wang. The mountain ghost mask covered all of his expression. Only his entire body stood there, motionless and silent. Without a doubt, he was not moved. Lin Zhongren turned around and stretched out his hand. He shook out a long jade whip. The Lin clan's heirloom, the jade python. He was about to make a move. Jiang Wang's voice sounded at this moment. I didn't want you to kill him. Lin Zhongren stopped in his tracks and heaved a sigh of relief. Lin Zhongli was paralyzed on the ground. He was saved. His tears were about to burst out. However, the man wearing the mountain ghost mask continued in a devilish voice. The greatest sincerity in an apology should be to commit suicide. Chapter 633. Lin Zhongli's heart, which had just calmed down, suddenly tightened again. Lin Zhongren gritted his teeth again and walked toward his brother again. Lin Zhongren, what are you doing? At this time, an angry rebuke sounded. Jiang Wang looked in the direction of the voice. It was another old friend, Lin Duanxing, the father of Lin Zhongli and Lin Zhongren. His clothes were disheveled, and he had just climbed down from some woman's body. He reeked of alcohol and was obviously much more handsome than his two sons. But at this moment, his face was flushed red, and he was extremely angry. He's your brother, and you want to kill him? Are you an animal? He turned around and looked around. Are all of you good-for-nothings useless? Are you just going to watch this evil man strut around in my Lin family? What did I raise you for? Jiang Wang looked at him quietly, without the slightest intention of doing anything. Lin Zhongren, on the other hand, was expressionless at his father's scolding. He only said, from now on, I will take over the highest authority in the family. Men, take Lin Duanxing away. Don't you dare. Lin Duanxing stomped his foot. What the hell is wrong with your cultivation? I'm your father. Lin Zhongren, have you lost your mind? Who dares? He was like an angry old dog, roaring madly at the crowd. Let's see who dares. I will kill him. His usual attitude toward Lin Zhongren was actually very restrained, because he knew that his son didn't think highly of him. He also knew that he didn't have much ability and that his life of debauchery was over. He had thought about cultivation in his early years, but he didn't think about it later. Although he was incompetent, he also understood that his actual status in the family was definitely not as good as his two sons, especially not as good as Lin Zhongren. If one day he lost his temper with Lin Zhongren, he would be the one to lose face. So in front of his sons, he had always been honest. But now he was roaring, he was angry, and he was cursing Lin Zhongren, because Lin Zhongren's actions had really crossed his bottom line. Even if he was a useless person who had been a good-for-nothing for half his life, even if he was a piece of trash, he still had a bottom line as a father. No one could hurt his son. No one could hurt his son. Shua! He snatched a saber from one of the soldiers, pulled it out, and pointed it at Lin Zhongren. If you dare to lay your hands on your brother today, I won't be polite to you. Pa! Lin Zhongren lashed out with his whip and sent his saber flying, causing him to fall to the ground. Take him away. He lost his composure and he shouted fiercely. Soon, two clan soldiers couldn't stand the pressure of his gaze and stepped forward, one on the left and one on the right. They lifted Lin Duanxing up. Lin Duanxing was lifted up and dragged for a while. Suddenly, he recovered and struggled with all his might. Let me go. Let go. Do you want to die? Lin Zhengrun. Lin Zhengrun. You bastard. Bastard. Your mother would never forgive you in the underworld. Let go of me. Let go. He shouted as he was dragged away. Lin Zhengrun was stunned. He knew that his father's body had long been hollowed out by wine and women. He had deliberately controlled the strength of the whip so that it wouldn't really hurt him, but it would still make him unable to recover for a long time. Ever since he was young, he had lived for so many years. This was the first time he saw his father acting like a father, but it was on such an occasion. How ironic. This stupor only lasted for a very short time. Lin Zhengren continued to walk forward towards Lin Zhengli. Lin Zhengli supported himself with his hands on the ground and kept retreating. Finally, he got up and ran. A blue python hissed in the air and wrapped around him tightly, pulling him back firmly. Lin Zhengli's face was red. He shouted with difficulty, "Brother." Lin Zhengren only turned to Jiang Wang. "I'll persuade him." Jiang Wang reached out his hand and made a please do as you please gesture. Lin Zhengren pulled Lin Zhengli closer to him and began to persuade him. No one knew what he said. Lin Zhengli's face was first shocked, then angry, frightened, then begging, painful, and finally full of hatred. Lin Zhengren turned back again and said to Jiang Wang, "What do you think is the most sincere way for my brother to commit suicide?" Even though Jiang Wang was the initiator of all this, he couldn't help but sigh at Lin Zhengren's ruthlessness. He really had Lin Zhengli in his grasp. He even persuaded him to commit suicide. Such a person, even if he didn't have the talent for cultivation and didn't enter the National Academy, Lin Zhengli couldn't compete with him for the family inheritance. This person couldn't be left alive. Jiang Wang's heart was filled with killing intent, but his eyes didn't show it. People had to be killed one by one, and things had to be done one by one. At the very least, forcing Lin Zhengli to commit suicide still required Lin Zhengren's arrangement. He deliberately sized up the courtyard, and his gaze paused at the well. How about we seal his Tao energy and make him jump into the well? Jiang Wang asked in a negotiating tone. Lin Zhengren gritted his teeth and said, "Okay." Jiang Wang originally wanted to see Lin Zhengli's resistance and struggle. He wanted to see this show of brothers fighting continue. But Lin Zhengli only glanced at him, and then walked in the direction of the well as if he had accepted his fate. He was in pain, unwillingness, and hatred, but he accepted his fate. It was hard to imagine what weakness Lin Zhengren had to make him so obedient. However, this was no longer something Jiang Wang needed to care about. He only needed Lin Zhengli to suffer. He only needed this result. He had been waiting for this scene for a long time. When he first came to the Lin family's territory, he wanted to do this. But at that time, the situation was stronger than him. He still had him to take care of, so he couldn't risk his life in Wangjiang City. It was useless even if he did. Originally, he wanted to wait until he was stronger before returning to the Zhuang country to deal with it. But when he saw Lin Zhengren tonight, he suddenly couldn't help it. He had a sharp weapon, and his killing intent rose. Moreover, he was in despair at the Jiangcheng region, and the hatred in his heart hadn't dissipated. It was time to eliminate the old hatred. Lin Zhengli walked to the well. Before jumping in, he looked at Jiang Wang with hatred. His voice seemed to be squeezed out from between his teeth. "I want to know why. I've apologized and compensated you. I'm willing to pay to save my life. Why do you have to kill me? Why? Why?" He even screamed in despair. "Why?" Jiang Wang looked at him calmly, his eyes emotionless. Was he in despair? Was Concubine Song so desperate on the day she jumped into the well? How did she calmly pack up everything and choose to end her life? After Jiang Wang read the last letter Concubine Song wrote, he couldn't help but feel a lump in his throat. And then, how sad was she? He wanted Lin Zhengli to suffer the same pain as Song Rui. An eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. When you entered the courtyard just now, you shouldn't have taken the first step with your left foot, Jiang Wang said. This was the only answer. This was naked contempt, a bloody humiliation. He was treated like an ant, a mad dog. What reason did he need? There was no second voice in the entire Lin family's territory. The Lin family members felt humiliated and deeply pained, but no one dared to make a sound. Lin Zhongli gritted his teeth and looked at Lin Zhongran with hatred. Plop! Then he jumped into the well. Chapter 634. Lin Zhongren didn't look at the well or how Lin Zhongli jumped into the well. He only looked at Jiang Wang. "Can you see clearly this time?" he asked. Jiang Wang listened for a while. He heard how Lin Zhongli, whose Tao energy was sealed, struggled at the bottom of the well, how he lost his strength and sank into the water. He did hear it clearly. Lin Zhongli was dead. He was completely dead. Back then, in order to get an explanation for an end, Jiang Wang borrowed a spear and slashed the door. The Lin family only pushed out Lin Zhongluan. This explanation was only for the sake of Zhu Weiwa. And today, he came here with a mask on his face and casually found a reason to kill Lin Zhongli. Everything seemed to have changed, but it also seemed like nothing had changed. The thorn that he had to avoid because of his lack of strength was finally pulled out. Was it happy? It didn't seem to be. Jiang Wang stood there, feeling a little lost. The thorn was pulled out, but the wound left behind by the thorn seemed to tell him the nature of this world. There is no reason in this world, only raw strength and cold reality, Jiang Yin said faintly in Tongtian Palace. I have seen too much in the imprint of the white bone god. If you're not so stubborn and are willing to listen to me, I can make you stronger faster. Let go of those meaningless restraints. Etiquette, morality, kindness, they're just shackles used by the weak to restrain the strong. Jiang Wang was silent. Lin Zhongren thought that Jiang Wang's silence was still confirming Lin Zhongli's death. He gritted his teeth angrily, but he could only remain calm. Jiang Wang thought that Jiang Wang's silence was because he had been persuaded. He calmly encouraged more words, slowly eroding this youth's heart. But Jiang Wang was silent. Silence because of his determination. Silence because of his determination. There was no reason in this world. Was there only raw strength? No. Why was Zhu Weiwo willing to lend him the burning gun? It was because of reason. Why did Jiang Wang want to kill Lin Zhongli today? It was because of reason. Jiang Yin, your path is only suitable for yourself. Perhaps there's no reason in this world, but there will always be some people who are willing to reason. For example, the legalist rules of the heavens and the earth are to uphold the principles of the world. Law is a kind of principle. Something seemed to be trembling. Jiang Wang could feel the pitch-black chains shuttling back and forth in the void around him like lightning. At this moment, a second chain split off. In the courtyard, Lin Zhongren was still waiting for Jiang Wang's response. Jiang Wang had long wanted to kill him. He had never promised to guarantee Lin Zhongren's safety. He believed that if Lin Zhongren had the chance to kill him, Lin Zhongren would not hesitate to kill him. Similarly, he would not hesitate to kill Lin Zhongren. Jiang Wang's fingers twitched slightly. He was about to attack and kill Lin Zhongren. I have something to report to your excellency. It's about your experience in Wangjiang City's Dao Academy, Lin Zhongren suddenly said. Oh. Jiang Wang was curious. Could it be that the rotten wood formula had some other secret? Lin Zhongren looked around and said respectfully, let's go in and talk. He acted like he didn't trust his clansmen. Or rather, after the incident of forcing Lin Zhongli to die, he could no longer trust his clansmen. Therefore, he had to report to Jiang Wang alone. Sure. Jiang Wang nodded slightly. He had the overall situation under control. He couldn't find an opponent in the entire Wangjiang city, so he had nothing to worry about. Lin Zhongren's cultivation was at the Soaring Dragon realm, so he could kill him with a single sword strike. There was no harm in listening first. Disperse. Today's matter ends here. Lin Zhongren looked at the clansmen guarding outside the courtyard and only said this before turning around and walking into the room. It seems that you are very confident in what you want to say. Jiang Wang followed him in and closed the door behind him. He said slowly, are you sure you can convince me? You have already seen my sincerity just now. I have no intention of resisting you. Lin Zhongren had never had to worry about food and clothing since he was young. He was used to wealth and wealth. At this moment, he walked respectfully and led the way for Jiang Wang. However, He behaved very naturally. This kind of person was probably the so-called flexible person. There was an oil lamp burning in the room, which cast a flickering light on the side of his face. Actually, I have long been dissatisfied with the Tao Academy. In the Tao Academy, Jiang Wang was attracted by the content of his words. He subconsciously took a few steps forward. Suddenly, the light patterns lit up. Dense array patterns lit up in the room. Whoosh! It was as if he had appeared by the sea, and the waves were surging. 9 blue water dragons of different shapes quickly condensed in the room and attacked Jiang Wang from all directions. Lin Zhengren had actually engraved an array formation in his room. But to the current Jiang Wang, it was really not enough. He was even surprised by Lin Zhengren's recklessness. Did he think that he could resist him with an array formation of this level? Jiang Wang drew his sword at lightning speed, and his sword spun 9 times. As he sheathed his sword, the 9 blue water dragons had already been cut off from their Tao essence connections and dissipated on the spot. Only the water traces on the ground could prove that they had indeed appeared. Jiang Wang strode forward and suddenly saw the light of the array patterns again. There was another array formation in the room, an array formation within an array formation. But this array formation was not targeted at Jiang Wang. The dissipated water essence suddenly gathered at this moment and quickly formed a wall of flowing water. It was like a translucent cover that trapped Lin Zhengren on the spot. Lin Zhengren stood inside the flowing water cover and looked at Jiang Wang. Jiang Wang stretched out his right hand, and a blazing flame ignited in his palm. Do you think you can stop me with this? I can break it in 10 breaths at most. Of course, I even think that you only need 5 breaths to break this wall of flowing water. You said 10 breaths, probably to numb me? Lin Zhengren's expression had already calmed down. He even looked very calm. But before you attack, why don't you think about where I get the confidence to do this? He raised a horn-like object for Jiang Wang to see clearly. This is a cultivation horn. Have you heard of it before? Jiang Wang said nothing. The only response was the increasingly blazing flame in his hand. Lin Zhengren continued, I don't know who you are, but since you understand Wangjiang's Tao Academy, you should be very familiar with our country. Then you definitely know who the country's prime minister is and what his divine ability is. Then I'll tell you now. This cultivation horn in my hand can contact Duru Hui in 3 breaths. As soon as you start attacking the wall of flowing water, I'll immediately use the cultivation horn. Jiang Wang looked at him, wanting to see through his tough exterior, but clearly failing. His gaze then darkened. I don't believe that you could directly contact Duru Hui. If you could, why would you wait until now? The Prime Minister said that the country is small and it's not easy to nurture talents, so he will do his best to protect every talent. Each of the 6 heroes of the Academy has a cultivation horn, and I happen to be one of them. It's not hard for you to find out about this. Lin Zhengren didn't feel the urgency of life and death at all, but only now did he finally reveal a sliver of resentment. As for why I've waited until now, isn't it because you've always been watching me, not giving me the slightest chance? Previously, in the Academy, Jiang Wang's attention had never left him. He had countless chances to attack, but he understood that as soon as he made a move, he would immediately be killed. Jiang Wang definitely wouldn't give him 3 breaths of time. Every opportunity was a death trap. Opportunities that relied on oneself to fight for were true opportunities. For this, he didn't hesitate to whip his own father and force his own younger brother to death. Anyone in this world could die, but he, Lin Zhengren, couldn't. Chapter 635. Lin Zhengren had been cultivating in the National Academy, and he rarely came back to the Lin family in Wangjiang City. How cautious must a person be to set up a formation in a room that he didn't usually live in? And there were 2 of them at once. He was probably worried that something would happen to him at all times and kept a way out for himself. If it weren't for the sudden encounter tonight, Jiang Wang believed that it would be very difficult for him to catch Lin Zhengren. Lin Zhengren was so cunning and cautious. If it was against an ordinary opponent, the first water dragon formation would be enough. Today, it could still attract Jiang Wang's attention and buy time for Lin Zhengren. And the wall of water and the plowing horn were a perfect match. If it were any other powerhouse that the plowing horn could contact, Jiang Wang could choose to quickly break the formation and kill him before leaving calmly. But if that person was Du Ruhui, Jiang Wang couldn't help but sigh. Putting everything else aside, it was a great blessing for the Zhuang country to have a powerhouse like Du Ruhui, who was so close yet so far, and who cared about his country. How many powerhouses could he be compared to? If you don't believe me, you can take a gamble and see if I can really contact the state minister immediately. If you win, you will kill me without any benefits. If you lose, you will be hunted down by the state minister and pay with your life for me. Lin Zhengren looked straight at Jiang Wang. Sir, do you want to take a gamble? He actually still had a few protective magic artifacts on him, but their level was not high enough to make the other party more cautious, so he didn't take them out as a bargaining chip. On the contrary, if he continued to hide, he might be able to deal with accidents. Then why haven't you activated it? Jiang Wang also looked into Lin Zhengren's eyes. Both sides were testing each other's determination. Although in terms of strength, Lin Zhengren was no match for Jiang Wang. But with his ruthlessness and caution, he once again won the right to fight. It's not easy to make the plowing horn, and it won't be used again without great merit. I've already lost a lot tonight, and I don't want to lose anymore. Lin Zhengren said slowly. However, considering the duration of the wall of water at this intensity, I'll give you 10 minutes. After 10 breaths at most, I will directly play the plowing horn. He turned around to stare at Jiang Wang. Even though he could not see Jiang Wang's face through the mask, it was as if he wanted to carve this man's face into his heart. Now, it's your turn to make the choice. Do you want to stay here and try to kill me, or do you want to run away immediately? Jiang Wang was silent. Time passed slowly but determinedly. Separated by the flowing water barrier, the two of them faced each other in silence. 8 breaths, 7 breaths, 6 breaths, 3 breaths. Jiang Wang raised his hand high, and the flame in his palm blasted a huge hole in the roof. Through the hole, he flew away without saying a word. Lin Zhengren was indeed a formidable opponent, but Jiang Wang was not worth risking his life for. He chose to give up. In the end, the mysterious man wearing the mountain ghost mask left. Lin Zhengren was alone in the room for a long time before he finally breathed a sigh of relief. He took a few steps back and fell into a chair. Tonight was probably the biggest crisis he had ever faced in his life. Because he was completely unprepared, he encountered a sudden encounter, and he was suddenly hostile. Moreover, the other party had the advantage of overwhelming strength. But in the end, he still managed to get through this terrifying crisis, even though the price he paid was so heavy. In a room where there was no one around, Lin Zhengren closed his eyes and forced back a tear that was about to fall. Was he sad? No matter how much of a trash Lin Zhengli was, no matter how vicious he was still his younger brother. The two of them grew up together, and naturally, there were times when they were innocent and naive. There were times when they were truly brothers. How could he not be sad? But Lin Zhengren only allowed his sadness to linger in that moment, because tonight was not over yet. He opened his eyes, got up, and walked out. His expression had already become very calm. When he reached the door, he stopped, because there was a white-haired old man standing outside the door, leaning on a cane. He was the head of the Lin clan, his grandfather. Lin Zhengren opened his mouth. Grandfather. He was a precocious person. Since he was very young, he had looked down on his father. His name was Lin Duanxing, but he was neither decent nor incompetent. Other than drinking and playing with women, he didn't know anything else. He was a good-for-nothing. And the person he was closest to since he was young was this white-haired old man in front of him, his grandfather. His grandfather was an extremely scheming person. The Lin clan of Wangjiang City, which was once unknown, grew up in his grandfather's hands and became the leader of the clans in Wangjiang City. Perhaps because he was too disappointed in Lin Duanxing, his grandfather was personally in charge of his and his younger brother's education since they were young. People's hearts, tactics, business. He learned a lot from this old man. Compared to the irresponsible Lin Duanxing, His grandfather had really poured his life's work into the family. The white-haired old man stood alone outside Lin Jingren's door without any attendants. When the Lin clan members surrounded the courtyard and shouted at Jiang Wang, he didn't appear. When Lin Jingli was forced to jump into the well, he didn't appear. But at this moment, he appeared outside Lin Jingren's room. If there was anyone in the entire Lin clan who could truly understand Lin Jingren, it was only his grandfather. He looked at Lin Jingren. In his turbid eyes, there was wisdom given by time. "Have you thought it through?" he asked. Lin Jingren fell silent. Although he had made up his mind, he still hesitated in front of his grandfather. "I'm asking you if you've thought it through." The old man tapped the ground with his cane to urge him. Lin Jingren lowered his head and raised it again. His eyes became firm. "Grandfather, I can't bear such a reputation. Jingren, on one hand, I'm very disappointed in you. On the other hand, I'm very satisfied with you." The old man's white hair trembled in the night wind. His expression was a little sad. "I look forward to your future. At the same time, I'm sad for Zhengli. Although he's not as good as you, even his ruthlessness is not as good as yours." "Grandfather," Lin Jingren opened his mouth. The old man raised his hand and interrupted him. "Go, make the choice you think is right. I'll deal with Duanqing. Patricide will be punished by the heavens." They all understood very well that once the matter of Lin Jingren forcing his own brother to kill was exposed, Lin Jingren would no longer have a future at the National Academy. No matter how dark or dirty the world was, at least during the day, everyone needed to see sunlight. And with so many people present tonight, this secret would be very difficult to keep. With Lin Duanqing's personality, there was even less hope that he would consider the big picture. So there was actually only one choice. This choice was the reason for the old man's disappointment, but also the reason for his satisfaction. Lin Jingren gritted his teeth and turned to leave. "Lin Jingren," the old man said behind him, "never forget what the Lin family has done for you. Never forget that your surname is Lin. In the underworld, I want to see a glorious Lin family." Lin Jingren's footsteps only paused for a moment before he continued forward. Night. A demon barged into Wangjiang City's Dao Academy at night, forcing the Dao technique rotten wood art. At that time, Lin Jingren, one of the 6 heroes of the National Academy, had also participated in the pursuit of the demon. Unexpectedly, the demon had actually infiltrated the Lin clan's territory and wiped out the entire Wangjiang City's Lin family. Chapter 636. After leaving Wangjiang City, Jiang Wang hid alone in the wilderness until dawn. The criminal division had indeed sent people out to hunt him down. It was a huge commotion. However, as long as Zhuangdu didn't send anyone over, they didn't take this matter seriously. Jiang Wang could relax because of this. Annie Song had saved him before. This was the reason why he agreed to his father's remarriage. Annie Song was Jiang and An's biological mother. This was enough for Jiang Wang to forgive her a lot. Forcing Lin Zhengli to death dissipated the resentment of the past. He didn't know if Annie Song could rest in peace in the netherworld, but he had promised and that he would get an explanation for her. Only now could it be considered complete. Even though Jiang Anan might not know why her mother could never write to her again, she knew that her mother would never write to her again. In the Lin family's territory, Jiang Wang also admitted that he had indeed underestimated Lin Jingren. Lin Jingren had still found a chance to escape under the suppression of strength. There were gains and losses in reviewing the entire process. A person like Lin Jingren could seize any small opportunity. Jiang Wang warned himself that if he faced Lin Jingren in the future, he couldn't underestimate him in the slightest. Jiang Wang was never a perfect person. He would make mistakes and be careless, but he never lacked self-reflection. He had also grown through setbacks. After confirming that Duru Hui hadn't been alarmed, Jiang Wang didn't think of returning to Wangjiang City. A person like Lin Jingren wouldn't be given another chance. He would definitely hide in the National Academy and not take a step out. He could only say that he would find another chance in the future. Moreover, although Lin Jingren was cautious and had a terrifying temperament, he wasn't strong enough. As long as Jiang Wang maintained his cultivation speed, Once the gap in strength widened to a certain extent, he would naturally be able to crush him. More importantly, Jiang Wang had concealed his identity the entire time on this trip to Wangjiang City. No one would know who he was. Even if Lin Zhengren wanted to take revenge in the future, he would probably have to find Zhang Linchuan. After returning to Maplewood City, Fang Chong was still sleeping soundly under the Life Monument. An illusory sword shadow appeared from time to time. Jiang Wang knew that it was Fang Chong's natal flying sword protecting its master. This was a tempering of his Dao heart. When he woke up, his Dao path might be decided here. Jiang Wang didn't disturb him. He found a place not far away and sat down. He stared at Maplewood City for a while before he closed his eyes and entered the great illusionary land. Now that he had obtained the Rottenwood formula, he needed to accumulate more merit points to deduce. Therefore, in the following matches on the Sword Discourse Arena, he would not hold back anything other than his divine ability. Time was sometimes the most insignificant thing, because you can't remember it all. There was no sun, no moon, and no stars in the sky. There was fog everywhere, a cold and gloomy fog. The fog of the netherworld shrouded the world of the living, and helpless corpses filled the gaps between the yin and yang. Ling he could not remember how many days he had lived in this gloomy world. He only remembered that he had buried a few people. He had to remember, because other than him, no one else could remember. In the past, in this place, there was no way to specify the time. It was only an approximate concept. A while ago, a long time ago. Therefore, the before should be some time ago. At that time, he was eating. Everyone in Maplewood City had died, and there was still a lot of food left. However, due to the invasion of the fog of the netherworld, it was basically inedible. Ling had a way. He only needed to control the black and yellow qi in the sky and carefully clean it, and the food would return to its original state. However, the current him didn't actually need to eat. He just wanted to maintain his life as a human in this world. Eating proved that he was still alive. It proved that there were still people alive in Maplewood City. Sometimes life was a futile effort, but there were still people living futilely. While Ling he was eating, he suddenly felt an inexplicable sense of intimacy. He didn't know where this feeling came from, but he felt warm in his heart, as if he was being comforted by something. He put down his bowl and chopsticks, and couldn't help but walk in the direction of the netherworld. He walked out of the room, out of the small courtyard, out of Pegasus Alley. This small courtyard in Pegasus Alley was one of his two homes. The other home was near the City Lord's mansion, and it was the house where the youngest had always lived. He didn't need a house, and he didn't even need a bed. The houses in the dead zone didn't seem to have any meaning. However, Ling, he just felt that there must be someone living in the house, or it would lose its liveliness. He didn't want the houses of the youngest and the third to be so dead, even if they were already dead. Therefore, he went back and forth between the two houses, cooking, washing, and sweeping, living a normal life. That feeling of being comforted was nostalgic. However, not long after he left Pegasus Alley, that feeling disappeared. Ling he was stunned on the spot, feeling a sense of emptiness and loss. Then, he turned around and continued to live a normal life. Cooking, washing, sweeping, chanting sutras, collecting corpses, and annotating sutras. He always did these things over and over again. There was no need for meaning. The meaning was in these things themselves. However, today that sudden sense of intimacy appeared again. At this time, Ling had just finished digging a deep pit, and he put a dead couple who had died in each other's arms into the grave. The impulse of emotion urged Ling to quickly search for them. In his heart, he also longed for that feeling. In this dead world sandwiched between yin and yang, it was very difficult for human emotions to appear. However, he still earnestly and sincerely chanted the sutras, and then he buried the couple's grave with his own hands. He had to finish what he started. This was his necessary insistence. After completing the entire burial ceremony, he let himself go and followed the feeling in his heart and headed in the direction of the unseen. There was no direction in this area. Although following the old city pattern, it seemed that he could still connect to the direction of the past. However, Ling he deeply understood that this world was chaotic. There was no east, west, north, or south. However, the intimate feeling in his heart, the warm feeling that belonged to humans, was like a beacon in the vast universe. There was no need for direction. It was the direction. This time, this feeling actually lasted for a long time. Ling he kept walking and walking until he reached the end of this area. He had long known that there was an end to this area. The range of this area was the range of Maplewood City before. However, the so-called end, the so-called boundary, was not as simple as a wall or a barrier. If it was a wall, Ling he would have broken through it long ago. If it was a mountain range, Ling he would have dug through it sooner or later. However, it was just a boundary. It existed in reality and illusion at the same time. It was the law of heaven and earth. It could not be crossed, and it could not be passed through. Now, Ling he was at the end of this area, at the end of a certain chaotic direction. He felt that he was very close to that kind of intimacy. However, he could not get any closer. This was the limit. What was the reason for that feeling? Was it a kind of summoning? Or was it a kind of blessing? Was there someone who wanted to pull this area back to the modern world? Ling he could not determine. However, he really missed the feeling of belonging to humans. Hope, expectation, fantasy. In this land of dead silence, in this human ruin abandoned by the modern world, these words were so precious. Ling he sat down quietly, leaned against the stubborn boundary between reality and illusion, and gently closed his eyes. This was the first good night's sleep he'd had since this place had fallen. Chapter 637. Jiang Wang ended the battle in the great illusionary realm. Without using divine abilities, the battle was not easy. However, he still won more than lost, and his merit was gradually accumulating. At this stage, the highest level he encountered was an ordinary inner palace at the level of 3 prefectures. Jiang Wang estimated that after that, he would have to reach the level of 4 prefectures, 5 prefectures, or even the inner palace with divine abilities. On the Dao development platform, he used up all the merit he had accumulated so far to deduce the Rottenwood technique, and it was barely deduced to a low-grade A-grade. The cultivation threshold of a low-grade A-grade Dao technique was only the soaring dragon realm. Of course, Jiang Wang was not satisfied. Therefore, although he studied it seriously, he did not engrave it in his inner palace. He still needed to improve it at least one more time. Xiang Qian had already slept for 3 days and 3 nights. Jiang Wang had also been here the whole time. During this period, Anand's cloud crane flew nonstop. If not for the fact that the cloud crane was condensed by Dao techniques, she would have died of exhaustion. Jiang Wang had to coax her to calm her down. The Rottenwood technique itself did not have a fixed form. It was more like an evolution of power. It was similar to the power of totems and stars. Of course, it was not as grand as them. Instead, it seemed dark and narrow-minded. That grayish-white power of decay was very strange. There was a feeling of obliterating vitality, but it was not a pure power of death. If one had to describe it, it was probably the word Rottenwood itself. The name of the Dao technique was very appropriate. It was unknown how the dean of Wangjiang City's Dao Academy discovered such power. However, the cultivation world had infinite possibilities. There were many extremely powerful Dao techniques. Perhaps they were just a flash of inspiration for an ordinary cultivator. The more familiar Jiang Wang was with this technique, the more certain he was that the Rottenwood technique had great potential. After practicing a Dao technique for a while, Jiang Wang was wondering if he should leave for a while to do something else. Xiang Qian suddenly sat up. As soon as he opened his eyes, they shone brightly. "You're awake?" Jiang Wang asked as he put away his Dao technique. "I'm awake." Xiang Qian closed his eyes and opened them again. The sharpness disappeared, and he returned to his listless appearance. However, some invisible things had already changed. In this round of conversation, the question had 2 meanings, and so did the answer. "What's your next plan?" Jiang Wang asked. Xiang Qing stood up and raised his finger. A small and exquisite flying sword pierced through the air and hovered in front of him. He didn't answer the question. "Do you know the name of this flying sword of mine?" Jiang Wang shook his head. You never mentioned it. I've always felt that I'm not worthy of it, so I'm embarrassed to tell you its name. When Fang Chong spoke, the flying sword shook as if it was unwilling to agree. Thus he laughed. His laughter was arrogant and unbridled. This sword is the product of my master's collection of rare treasures from all over the world. Using the secret technique of the only my sword Tao as a guide, I personally fused it with my own sword embryo and cultivated it with my life. It's called Dragon Light Shooting Bucket. Dragon Light Shooting Dough. Jiang Wang repeated the name, only to feel endless sharpness. Dual is the constellation of the heavens. When it blooms, the sword light will reach the constellation in the vault of heaven. Speaking of this sword, Fang Chong's enthusiasm was something Jiang Wang had never seen before. It really is worthy of its name, Jiang Wang praised. It's definitely stronger than your Sauvignon yearning. Fang Chong raised his head and puffed out his chest proudly. Clang! Before Jiang Wang could speak, the Sauvignon yearning in the Shenlong wooden scabbard suddenly hummed softly. It doesn't seem to agree. Jiang Wang raised the sword in his hand and smiled. Fang Chong glanced at the Sauvignon yearning and was a little surprised. It's about to give birth to a spirit. During this time, Jiang Wang had been using the sword nurturing technique that Lien Ke had specially created for the Sauvignon yearning. The sword itself was hidden in the Shenlong wooden scabbard. Its growth speed was definitely predictable. Today, after being stimulated by a peerless flying sword like Dragon Light Shooting Bucket, it immediately revealed its sharpness. Jiang Wang smiled with satisfaction. It's not certain who's stronger and who's weaker. In terms of the sword itself, the current Sauvignon yearning naturally couldn't compare to Dragon Light Shooting Bucket. But since the sword had a spirit, Jiang Wang, as the sword's master, naturally had to support it. Moreover, the Sauvignon yearning was still growing. Its future was uncertain. Fang Chong understood swords very well, so he only said, "Then let's wait until we meet again to discuss this matter." Meet again? Jiang Wang grasped the main point. Where are you going? The solipsism sword Dao is the best sword technique in the world, and Dragon Light Shooting Bucket is the sharpest sword in the world. I can't let them suffer anymore. Fang Chong's expression was unprecedentedly serious. I also want to test my sword and walk the path of invincibility again. Jiang Wang looked at Fang Chong. He wanted to say a few words of advice, but he was afraid that it would destroy the confidence that he had painstakingly built up. Fortunately, Fang Chong didn't lose his mind. He added, "Of course, we'll start from the soaring dragon realm. That's more like it." With Fang Chong's strength, he could definitely compete for the title of the strongest soaring dragon. And if he used Dragon Light Shooting Bucket, Jiang Wang really couldn't think of anyone who could defeat him in the soaring dragon realm. He said, "Yes, after all, I, the strongest in the soaring dragon realm, have already opened the inner palace. The second strongest in the soaring dragon realm, Wang Yiwu, is also tempering his supernatural powers. You have a high chance of walking the path of invincibility in the soaring dragon realm." He was joking, but at the same time, he was reminding him that there was always someone better. Fang Chong glanced at him. "Don't worry. I'll definitely meet you again on the path of invincibility in the inner palace." He meant that he wanted to be invincible in the soaring dragon realm, then in the inner palace, then in the outer palace, just like his master in the past. And he saw Jiang Wang as a checkpoint on his path of invincibility in the inner palace. It was rare for Fang Chong, who had always been dejected, to show off his ability. As a friend, Jiang Wang could only be happy. He laughed. "Unfortunately, I also want the title of invincible in the inner palace. Go. I'll wait for you to sharpen my sword for me." Fang Chong also laughed, laughing loudly. The Dragon Light Shooting Bucket expanded in the wind. He leaped onto the flying sword and sang loudly. "I'll go to Kunlun in the west and Shu in the south. I'll go to the north to kill demons in the desert, and I'll slash the gate of life and death in the east." His voice pierced the clouds and headed west. After so many years, did anyone still remember the invincible Xiang Fengqi's sword-flicking song? Watching Fang Chong go west, Jiang Wang also stepped forward. He walked forward to walk his path. That path was destined to be difficult, destined to be bumpy, but also destined to be dazzling. As soon as the sword was unsheathed, the dragon light shooting bucket would end. And Jiang Wang also had his own direction, which had never changed. His path was not only his own, but also everything he had experienced and carried. Among all his experiences and burdens, the area of Maplewood City was undoubtedly the heaviest. After experiencing so much standing outside Maplewood City now, those memories were still very clear, as if they were yesterday, as if they had never been far away. Here, Jiang Wang saw himself again and again. How did he leave back then? And how much did he experience before coming back? Jiang Wang walked away with large strides. In fact, he always had a place he wanted to go and a person he wanted to see, but he didn't know if he should go or see that person. After staying outside Maplewood City for a few days, he finally made a decision just now. Before leaving here completely, he suddenly felt something and looked back at Maplewood City again. There was a faint expectation that he didn't know where it came from, but he didn't see anything. P.S. The name Dragonlight Shooting Bucket comes from the preface to the Pavilion of Prince Tong. Heavenly Treasure, Dragonlight Shooting Bucket. Chapter 638. Of the three counties in Zhuang Country, Hualin County and Daesan County were actually connected to the Mo Kingdom. Logically speaking, it would be more convenient for the Zhejiang armor soldiers to return to Daesan County by land after retreating from the front lines. However, as the Zhuang court was reorganized in the military, all the rotating troops at the front lines had to complete their training and deployment in Hualin County. Therefore, Du Yehu and the others had to return to Hualin County first before going to Qinghai County. They would then follow the west flow of Qingjiang River back to Daesan County's Zhejiang City. The Zhejiang armor had an expansion this year, from 1,000 men to 3,000 men. Originally, there were only 4 deputy generals under the main general, and each deputy general commanded 200 soldiers. Now that there was an additional deputy general, the number of soldiers under each deputy general was increased to 500. What surprised many people was that the main general of the Zhejiang armor, Duan Li, stood his ground and made Du Yehu, who was only at the peak of the soaring dragon realm, the 5th deputy general. One had to know that the deputy generals of the Zhejiang armor had always been at the inner mansion realm, and they could directly become the mayor of a city. With such a foundation, Zhejiang City was known as a county within a county. It was once known as the 4th county of Zhuang Country. Now, the number of soldiers under his command had multiplied, and his real power had increased. Instead, Du Yehu, who was at the peak of the soaring dragon realm, was appointed. It was inevitable that some people would be unhappy. However, when the army was brought to the battlefield, everyone shut their mouths. Du Yehu might not be the strongest deputy general of the Zhejiang armor, but he was definitely the most hard-working and fearless one. He treated the battlefield as his home, staying at the front lines and leading every battle. Of course, he also obtained the most battle merits. Things in the army were simple. If you could win battles and take heads, everyone would respect you. Everything else was meaningless. Jiang Wang did not know how Du Yehu was doing. He had never asked anyone about Du Yehu, because he had already decided to take responsibility for everything. Asking around was also a form of evidence. He had never thought of telling Du Yehu the truth. With Du Yehu's personality, if he knew the truth about Maplewood City, he would not care about the difference in strength or consider the consequences. He would definitely rush to Exine and City immediately. That would undoubtedly be suicide, and Jiang Wang would never want that to happen. Enough people had died in Maplewood City. Du Yehu had to live. No matter how painful it was, he had to live. Right now, he just wanted to see Du Yehu with his own eyes. He wanted to see how the anxious and impulsive Brother Tiger was doing. When he went to the old Maple Forest domain and saw the old place, he missed his old friends even more. Jiang Wang boarded a passenger ship and took the waterway to the west of Qingjiang. Now that he was truly sailing on Qing River, he could feel the difference in Zhuang State. In the past, It was impossible for so many ships to pass by on the surface of Qing River. Occasionally, they would see the soldiers of the underwater manor patrolling. They were very polite to the merchants who came and went. In the past, the 800 miles of Clear River was basically the private land of the Clear River Manor. The human race and the water race rarely interacted with each other. There were differences and conflicts, but both sides had basically agreed to establish a nation and were allies. He didn't know if this was a good or bad thing. However, for some reason, Jiang Wang thought of Bei, knew whom he saved at the shore of Qing River. If there were still people from the Zhuang court who secretly kidnapped the water race and extracted their Dao meridians, what would the attitude of the Clear River Manor be? Would the master of the 800 miles of Clear River, Song Hengjiang, still be able to humiliate the chief of the arrest department and firmly say no to Zhuang Gaoxian? Similarly, at the shore of Qing River, he risked his life to save White Lotus from the chief of the arrest department, Ji Xian. That woman, was she still at the White Bone Path? Was she plotting? Jiang Wang diverted his thoughts and thought of Jiang Ainan's playmate, the girl with a ponytail named Song Qingji, and that elder Gay. At that time, he was anxious to ask for help from Maplewood City, but was directly rejected. Did the Clear River Manor refuse to help Maplewood City because of the conflict with the Zhuang court, or because they already knew Zhuang Gaoxian's intentions? At that time, he was angry and said that if the water race didn't help the human race would help the human race. Then, he heard the news of the Three Mountain City being sealed. At that time, he felt that the Zhuang court seemed to have been abandoned. But after a year, the entire Zhuang state was unprecedentedly stable. Looking at the harmonious interaction between the water race and the human race in front of him, were the people's hearts so easily fooled? Did no one really care about what those in power did? Or was it that the so-called truth could only be grasped in the hands of the real power? Jiang Wang had experienced a lot, but the more he experienced, the more he couldn't understand this world. He entered Daishan County very quietly. When he reached Jiujiang City, it was almost impossible to sneak in. This was because the entire Jiujiang City was the largest nest of ferocious beasts in the Zhuang state. The Zhejiang Xian armor fought every day here. Therefore, in peacetime before war, they still maintained a strong combat power. Other than the ferocious beasts, there were only the soldiers of the Zhejiang Xian armor. There were no outsiders. Jiang Wang could only sneak in. The most powerful person in the entire Zhejiang Xian armor was undoubtedly the main commander, the peak of the outer tower, Duan Li. When Jiang Wang was still in the Chengdao Academy, he had heard of Duan Li's ferocious name. From the spread of the battle records, Duan Li was definitely stronger than Hai Zoming. He should be a powerhouse on the same level as the King of Hell. Although Jiang Wang killed Hai Zoming with his own hands and took his dragon imprisoning rope, he was very clear that his strength was no match for Hai Zoming. He was able to kill Hai Zoming purely because he was unprepared while prepared and had various restraints. He definitely didn't stand a chance against Duan Li. Therefore, he needed to be extra careful here. As the largest city in Daishan County, Zhejiang City had the largest nest of ferocious beasts. It was once known as the fourth county of the Zhuang state. After Jiang Wang sneaked in, he realized that the security was indeed top-notch. The entire Zhejiang City was a huge military camp. For safety's sake, Jiang Wang gave up on his half-assed stealth skills and put on the stealth cloak. He walked for a while and stopped for a while. When he entered the Zhejiang Xian armor's territory, the sky was already dark. It was better this way. Dark meant that everyone had to stay in the camp. When Du Yahu had sent people back to Maplewood City to brag, he had bragged that he was a captain. Later, Zhaoru had sent him out to be a captain. Jiang Wang knew Du Yahu well. He followed the path of the ancient military schools, Qi and Blood. The path was dangerous, but very powerful. It was one of the rare cultivation methods that didn't rely on resources. Du Yahu's current strength should be between the reaching heaven state and the soaring dragon state. His corresponding position should be a captain or a deputy general. Therefore, Jiang Wang looked for the tents of those deputies and captains. However, he was disappointed again and again. After searching for half a night, he still didn't see Du Yehu. He started to feel anxious. Was Tiger, Du not in the Zhejiang Xian armor anymore? Or did something happen? Right at this moment, he heard a voice. Zhao Erding, come here. General Du is looking for you. Jiang Wang's spirit lifted. He remembered this name. Du Yehu had a little soldier called Zhao Erding. He had once brought a message to Maplewood City for Du Yehu. He was a little simple and honest. He should know where Du Yehu was. Thinking this, Jiang Wang followed the voice. Chapter 639. The dull-witted Zhao Erding was easy to recognize. Compared with his memory, there was not much change. But from the armor on his body, he was probably promoted. Jiang Wang did not expect him to be promoted, but it was a good thing. Zhao Er heard that only Du Yehu would treat such a foolish person fairly. On the other hand, if Zhao Erding could be promoted, it meant that Du Yehu was doing well. Then that General Du, was he a tiger? Du Lauer became the chief general of Zhejiang Xuanjia. He pushed Duanli down. Jiang Wang suppressed the waves in his heart. He heard Zhao Erding say casually, Deputy General Yang, why is Deputy General Du looking for me? As soon as he said this, his position became clear. Deputy General Yang, who was standing in front of him, said helplessly, do you have to say the word deputy and deputy so clearly? Can't you be more careful? Zhao Erding scratched his head. I didn't say anything wrong. How can I not be more careful? Okay. Yang Yi knew that there was no reason to talk to this fool, so he waved his hand and said, go ahead, General Du is still waiting for you. Zhao Erding said in a low voice, you haven't said anything yet. Why is Deputy General Du looking for me? Don't call me to drink. I have to practice tomorrow. If it were other people, they would definitely go when they heard the call of their superior. If they wanted to drink, they would be even happier. This was the treatment that only trusted subordinates could have. Only an idiot like Zhao Erding would be so concerned about the training. Yang Yin said impatiently, I just want you to report. Don't talk nonsense. Hurry up. Zhao Erding had to go reluctantly, but he was still muttering, what do I have to report? Jiang Wang moved his feet and followed behind them unhurriedly. Walking to a large military tent, Zhao Erding opened the curtain casually and entered. A pungent smell of alcohol rushed out. Even Jiang Wang frowned. Yang Yin and Zhao Erding seemed to be used to it. Deputy General Du. Zhao Erding shouted as soon as he entered the tent. I, Zhao Erding, am here to report. The layout of the tent was very simple. Other than a bough hanging on the wall, there were no other decorations. Du Yehu sat on the ground in the middle of a pile of wine jars. Hearing this, he burped and said drunkenly, Son of a B***, you're so loud. You scared me. Jiang Wang sneaked into the tent when Zhao Erding lifted the curtain. With his strength and the cover of the stealth cloak, it was difficult for Zhao Erding and Yang Yin to detect his sneaking in. Du Yehu was also drunk. The reason stealth cloak could hide its tracks was because it could blend into the environment. When the person wearing stealth cloak moved, stealth cloak would need to re-establish contact with the environment, so it would temporarily lose its effect. Back then, the reason why Yin Guan didn't immediately reveal himself while wearing the invisibility cloak was because he controlled it with his own secret technique, helping the invisibility cloak blend with the environment. However, it was still ineffective against Yulong, who was in the divine descent realm. Jiang Wang couldn't do that, but it wasn't a problem for him to restrain his aura and make himself invisible. After sneaking into the tent and standing in the corner for a while, invisible clothes had already blended back into the environment. He stood motionless in the corner, silently looking at Du Yehu. After not seeing him for a long time, Du Yehu still looked anxious. A young man, not even 20 years old, he looked like a middle-aged man. However, his beard was thicker and his face was thinner. Yang Yin advised, although we don't have any missions right now, I'm afraid General Duan won't be happy if you drink like this in the army. Du Yehu gulped down a large mouthful of wine, ignoring him. He only shouted to Zhao Erding, why don't you tell me more? When you went to Maplewood City to deliver a letter to me, what did those bastards say? Zhao Erding was a simple-minded person and couldn't understand the emotions involved. He only said in distress, "Again? I've already told you a few thousand times." Yang Yin slapped the back of his head. "I told you to tell me. So tell me. So much nonsense." Du Yehu suddenly roared, "Son of a b asterisk tch Yang Yin, go busy yourself with your military affairs. What does it have to do with you?" Yang Yin knew Du Yehu's temperament, so he didn't get angry. He only helplessly lifted the curtain and left. Only then did Du Yehu stare at Zhao Erding. "Tell me." His eyes were as wide as copper bells, but his pupils were bloodshot. It was unknown whether it was because he drank too much or for some other reason. In short, it looked very frightening. Even though Zhao Erding was used to being simple-minded, he couldn't help but feel a little scared. He said shyly, "Well, when I went to Maplewood City, I called those people together. I told them everything you told me to say. Not a single word left out." He emphasized, "I ran to a few places. I was there talking about how powerful you were, how you were in Zhejiang." Zhao Erding listened and rambled on. "When I was talking, the one who was dressed strangely well and looked strangely well only knew how to laugh." Du Yehu slapped his thigh. "Damn, the gigolo knew that I was bragging." Zhao Erding listened and said, "The one who looked very square and dressed very plainly didn't say anything. He didn't laugh either." As he spoke, Du Yehu interpreted, "Boss is still the most honest. The one who looked delicate and spoke very kindly, but I don't know why. When he looked at me, I felt a little guilty. Laosin doesn't show it on the surface, but his mind is very opinionated." Du Yehu downed the last jar of wine. "Okay, sleep." He directly fell head first. Crack, crack, crack. God knows how many jars of wine he broke. He was completely unaware of it. Seeing that Du Yehu had fallen into a deep sleep, Zhao Erding scratched his head, turned around, lifted the curtain, and left. It wasn't the first time Tiger Du was drunk, and it wasn't the first time he was called to say these old words while drinking. He was already used to this scene. He was very convinced by Du Yehu, but compared to repeating these old words, tomorrow's drill was more important. Jiang Wang, who watched the whole scene from the side, didn't move for a long time. For a few moments, he wanted to take off his stealth suit, jump in front of Du Yehu, and wake him up with a basin of water. He wanted to laugh before he lost his temper and say, "Du Yehu, look, I'm not dead. Not only am I not dead, but it is also doing very well now." But in the end, he didn't. It was because he couldn't explain why he wasn't dead, where he had been all this time, why he had left the Zhuang state, and what had happened in Maplewood City. When Du Yehu was still a child, he could pick up a knife and chop his enemies to death with his own hands. It was even more impossible for him to endure it now. But the opponent they had to face now wasn't someone they could overcome with courage and courage. Zhuang Gaoxian was already a perfected person of the present age. He could crush them to death with one finger, and it was as easy as crushing an ant. To deal with Zhuang Gaoxian, they needed courage that didn't fear death, steadfastness, and enduring pain for a long time. In the military tent, it was silent for a long time. Only Du Yehu's snoring could be heard. When Yang Yin lifted the curtain and walked into the military tent, she was surprised to find that the tent was clean and tidy. The wine jars that should have been messy on the ground were all gone. The table was a table, and the chair was a chair. As for Du Yehu, he was lying on the military bed with a blanket covering his body. "That's strange," Yang Yin muttered curiously. "When did idiot Zhao learn to be obedient? He even knows how to tidy things up?" Chapter 640. Everyone knew the rules of Bio City, but this graceful woman seemed to be an exception. She walked over slowly, as if she was taking a stroll in a bustling street. She was not as nervous as those who came to Bio City for the first time, nor was she as unrestrained as those who came to Bio City often. There were all kinds of people who came to Bio City, and the people here were no longer curious. Most of the people who lived here could not survive outside. They needed to work hard to earn money, and once they lost the protection of the life gold, they could be killed at any time. However, even an indifferent person could not help but take a second look at this woman. She was wrapped up very tightly, but her movements were extremely flirtatious. She was wearing a veil, but her eyes were captivating. "Miss, you forgot to pay the life gold." The guilty guard at the city gate, who had always been lazy, could not help but remind her. He did not care about the income of Bio City, and no matter how much life gold was collected, it had nothing to do with him. However, to this woman, it was very important. He had lived here for a long time, so he knew very well what kind of place Bio City was and what the people here were like. The most despicable and ugly side of human nature could be seen clearly here. A woman who was so charming even with her face covered, will be torn to pieces immediately after entering the city without the protection of a life gold. The woman turned her head and looked at him with her extremely charming eyes. "I'm embarrassed, so forget it." Her voice was soft, like a light scratch beside his ear. The guilty guard swallowed his saliva. "I can borrow your mother's leg." A palm slapped him 3 inches lower. A man with a single braid wearing a black-striped, blood-red robe appeared in front of the city gate and nodded at the woman. "Let go of my useless subordinate. His soul is about to be taken away by you." "Commander Lien, you must be joking. I'm here on behalf of 3 Fragrances Restaurant. Please forgive me." The woman covered her mouth and chuckled, her laughter rippling in the air. It tickled the hearts of those who heard it. The appearance of the vice-commander of the guilty guard, Lien Hung, made many people who were secretly observing them sigh, knowing that they had no chance. If there was anything in Ransom City that was more safe than life gold, it would naturally be the sinful lord and her sinful guards. Lien Hung sighed helplessly. "You'd better come in first. Blocking the city gate is messing up the hearts of all the men in the city. Or women too," he added. The woman's beautiful eyes turned slightly. She took light steps and stepped into unredeemed city. "Then I'll have to trouble Commander Lien to protect it." Lien Hung glared fiercely at the guilty guard and said, "I'll deal with you later." He turned around and led the way, heading straight for the core of unredeemed city, the prison tower. The guilty guard at the city gate shrank back. He did not mind being reprimanded, but he leaned back against the city wall in disappointment. He had seen too many different kinds of people, but for some reason, when this woman who didn't even show her face left, his heart felt empty. How could there be a bargain in this day and age? Especially in a place like Ransom City. Lien Hung was a playboy by nature, but he had never flirted with this woman from the beginning to the end. He did not even flirt with her. It was because he knew her strength that, even though he had opened up his inner mansion, he still had no chance of winning against this extremely charming woman. He was a playboy, but he was not crazy. Generally, he would not do things that looked for trouble. The sinful lord asked him to lead the way, so he led the way. The prison tower was the residence of the sinful lord, Huang Jinma, and the core of the entire Ransom City. The reason why Ransom City could survive between the 3 kingdoms of Yong, Zhuang, and Luo was not only because of the mutual restraint and fear between the 3 kingdoms, but also because of the special geography and rules of Ransom City. The sinful lord's strength was also indispensable. If it was someone who was not strong enough, a place like Ransom City, where villains gathered, would have been razed to the ground. Although she only ruled a city, she already called herself the ruler. Ransom City was her kingdom. The prison tower was her palace. Lien Hung stopped outside the tower, while the masked woman was led by a maid all the way to the 4th floor. The decorations on the 4th floor were very expensive, and most of the decorations were antiques. The maid only served a cup of tea and did not say anything unnecessary. After a while, a cold-looking woman in black came down from a higher floor. She lifted the hem of her skirt and sat on the main seat. That pair of long and narrow phoenix eyes swept over, and a majestic aura was born. The masked woman had already stood up and saluted. "May you of 3 Fragrances Restaurant greets the sinful lord." Huang Jima picked up the teacups served by the maid and took a sip. His tone was casual as he ordered, "Take off your veil." "May you was rude. To be able to meet your highness, I was so excited that I lost my sense of propriety." The masked woman explained as she took off her veil, revealing a charming face. Huang Jima looked at her and shook his head. This name is not good. Miaoyu suits you better. Miaoyu was not surprised when her previous identity was revealed, and her smile did not change. The sinful lord is very perceptive, this little girl admires. But now that I have joined Three Fragrances Restaurant, I don't need to use my previous name. She was explaining to the sinful lord that she changed her name not because she was not sincere, but because there was a reason. If it was a man, he would have been captivated by her charming smile. But Huang Jima was obviously not affected. There are some things that you have forgotten, but others may not. The Zhuang Kingdom's pursuit has not been cancelled yet, and they have offered a very high price for the white-boned saintess. With your highness here, Meiyu does not need to worry, Miaoyu flattered carefully. No matter how arrogant the Zhuang Kingdom is, they have to follow the rules of Bubao City. Sometimes it is not necessary, as long as you are stronger than me. The sinful lord, Huang Jinma, did not seem to care about his reputation or the rules she set. He said truthfully, if Zhuang Gaoxian comes to ask for you, I will immediately tie you up and send you over. Miaoyu's smile finally froze for a moment. But that old monster of the young kingdom has been eyeing us covetously. I don't think Zhuang Gaoxian will give him the chance. Huang Jinma changed the topic. Miaoyu immediately flattered. After all, Bubao City is your place. Anyone who comes has to think twice. But I also heard. Huang Jinma looked at her. The lifeless sect is also looking for you everywhere. Huang Jinma was like a cat playing with a mouse, leading left and right. Her absolute strength and status made her calm, and Meiyu also appropriately showed her embarrassment. She stiffly twitched the corner of her mouth. I didn't expect your highness to have heard of such a new small organization like the Lifeless Sect. Huang Jinma shook his head. The Lifeless Sect has developed very quickly. In just half a year, they have already developed some followers in the Yong Kingdom, the Chung Kingdom, and the Yun Kingdom. I will not underestimate them, and I think you will not either. The sinful lord's vision was so broad, and the information was so detailed that he even knew about the newly established Lifeless Sect. Bubao City's strength was not only on the surface. Sweat began to drip from Yaoyu's forehead, and she acted like a weak woman who was caught in her weakness, but pretended to be calm. I don't know much about this. Why is the Lifeless Sect looking for you? Huang Jinma asked again. Probably related to the White-Bone Path. I heard that they have some connections. Miaoyu pretended to be ignorant. I have already left the White-Bone Path and removed the Evil God's brand. I have nothing to do with the White-Bone Path anymore. Huang Jinma held the armrest with one hand and leaned his upper body slightly forward. This was an extremely oppressive posture. Her question, however, changed to another direction. Why are you called Masked Moon now? Is it because Mingyu is ignorant? His eyes seem to be able to see the depths of people's hearts. Who do you want to show your heart to? P.S. Happy Chinese Valentine's Day, everyone. If happiness is too difficult, then I wish you good health. Chapter 641. Miaoyu's eyes narrowed, but they quickly opened again. She was no longer embarrassed, no longer hesitant, no longer submissive. She no longer looked like a little mouse that was toyed with by a cat. She smiled. Her smile was natural, charming, and soul-stirring. Your Highness, you might be thinking too much. That's the name given by the owner. Perhaps it doesn't mean anything. This answer did not expose her completely, but it also did not sound stiff. She even used the name of the owner of the Three Fragrances to make it impossible for others to verify. This was the first time Huang Jinma smiled since they met. She leaned back, still high and mighty, but not as overbearing as before. The Three Fragrances has 7 heavenly fragrances and 11 heart fragrances. What fragrances are you in? What's your rank? Since she had already shown her attitude, Miaoyu did not dress herself up as a delicate little girl anymore. She even found a seat and sat opposite Huang Jinma. She smiled sweetly. Meiyu has just joined the Three Fragrances. She is not qualified to enter the heavenly fragrances or heart fragrances. However, Meiyu came to Redeeming City for an important matter. If your highness can succeed, Meiyu might be able to squeeze into the heavenly fragrances. Since the three fragrances in does not value you, why don't you stay in Beer Demon City? I will give you a commander on the same level as Kuei Shan. How about it? Kuei Shan was the current commander of the Sinful Guards. He was a martial artist with terrifying strength. In the entire Beer Demon City, his position was only below the Sinful King. Miao Yu's eyes were flirtatious. I am indebted to your highness. Unfortunately, Mei Yu has already promised the three fragrances in. Otherwise, I would not have been able to refuse. She said that she could not refuse, but she refused very straightforwardly. Huang Jinma said lightly, the three fragrances in seems to be a big business with branches all over the 5 regions. However, it started in the Chu territory and is now based in the southern region. It is too entangled with the Chu Ting. Sooner or later, it will be swallowed. Miao Yu smiled sweetly. I heard that the Yong, Zhuang, and Luo kingdoms were in a heated discussion. Miao Yu felt that the world was so big. Regardless of whether it was the east or the south, it was hard to stop the war. And the western region, it's better to set up more small temples, lest the incense is broken. What he meant was that the structure of the three fragrant and was able to last for a long time. At the same time, he pointed out that in the so-called four-party talks, Bu Ransom City was just a spectator. The true leaders were Yong, Zhuang, and Luo. You can't even refuse the three countries' talks in Buyao City. The only reason why Redeemed City could maintain its current peace was because the three countries were afraid of taking action against the rat for fear of breaking the vases. No one could truly let loose. Based on the difference in strength and status between them, these words were considered overstepping their boundaries. However, Huang Jinma was not angry. Instead, he looked at her with interest. Other than the method of three fragrances restaurant, what else can you teach me about Mei Yu? She also called her Mei Yu instead of Miao Yu. Obviously, she had recognized Miao Yu's new identity. He also asked her about the way to establish herself in the unredeemed city. A character like Huang Jinma naturally had his own plans. Rather than calling it a question, it was more like a test. Miao Yu did not flinch at all. She was not a soft and weak little woman, but a cruel and merciless evil witch. Previously, she was restrained in every way because she wanted to be humble and please Huang Jinma. Since Huang Jinma did not buy it, what she had to do now was to show her ability and value. She smiled calmly and spoke with assurance. The methods in the world are nothing more than to strengthen oneself internally and form a strong external support. Let's not talk about internal strength. You have your own ideas. Speaking of external support, you also have to avoid entering the tiger's den. You have to choose carefully. If you want to contact Chongqing, you might as well surrender directly. His Highness also said that the three fragrant is a big business, but the foundation is not stable. We need a strong person like His Highness to be our support. If both sides cooperate, wouldn't it be the best of both worlds? Huang Jinma gently raised his eyebrows. How do you think we should cooperate? Miao Yu got up and bowed. Mei Yu is here to build a branch in Buyao City. Huang Jinma asked knowingly. Buyao City welcomes anyone. You don't have to go through me to do business. Miao Yu smiled brightly. It's not an ordinary three fragrant inn, but a fragrant inn with a real strong cultivator. I want to build a core that controls all the branches in the western region. The reason why the three fragrant inn could build branches all over the world was not because it had the strength to suppress the world, but because almost all of its branches were just pure brothels. They only did business and did not involve transcendence. At most, some of the branches had 1 or 2 transcendents overseeing them. It was impossible to form a transcendental force that could really affect the local power structure. Most countries had no reason to refuse the three fragrant in's entry. After all, every three fragrant in would bring a large amount of tax money to the local area. Moreover, the three fragrant in that lacked the strength to protect itself could be swallowed by the local rulers at any time. Miao Yu's move was to link up the three fragrant in's branches in the western region in one fell swoop, increasing the potential influence. And it was not difficult to see that after this move was made, Miao Yu's ultimate goal was to unify them into a real force that had the right to speak in the local area. Just imagine, the three fragrant and that had branches all over the world would become an enormous power once it was truly unified. This kind of ambition, boldness, and structure was astonishing. From this point of view, there was indeed no place more suitable than Unredeemed City in the Western region. The three fragrant and wanted to unify all its branches and transform from a pure business into a power operation. The first resistance would come from the local authorities. Would the powerful Qin allow the three fragrant in to move in? Naturally, they would. The Qin state would be able to take in as many transcendents as the three fragrant in had. It was no different from a sheep entering a tiger's den. Only Unredeemed City had no way to extend itself and didn't need to worry about being swallowed up. Moreover, it was located in the neutral lands and didn't face too much political risk. Moreover, Unredeemed City could also use the three fragrant in channels to break through the three nations blockade. This was a true win-win situation. No wonder Miaoyu dared to come knocking and request an audience. No wonder she was so confident. Not only did she have far-reaching plans for the three fragrant inn, but she also saw through Unredeemed City's predicament. Huang Jima didn't comment and only asked, "This idea was made by your in-lord, or was it your idea?" Meiyu has become somewhat bold in order to enter the heavenly and heart-fragrant inn. Miaoyu laughed. Fortunately, the in-lord trusted me and allowed me to give it a try. Huang Jinma muttered to himself for a moment before offering a new condition. Whether it's the heavenly or heart-fragrant inn, you're still living under someone else's roof. If you join me, I'll promise you the future of Unredeemed City. Your bewitching mind art is easy to release, but difficult to withdraw. I might be able to help you. Miaoyu laughed. To Unredeemed City, cooperation with the three fragrant inn is much more important than Meiyu. This was a rejection, but what she said was also reasonable. No matter how outstanding Miaoyu was, she couldn't help Unredeemed City open up without the backing of the three fragrant inn. Hence, Huang Jinma's correct choice was to take the three fragrant inn and abandon Miaoyu. As for Miaoyu herself, the fact that the branch didn't involve transcendence was the fundamental reason why the three fragrant inn was able to expand so quickly without any resistance. But until now, it had severely shackled the further expansion of the three fragrant inn. The more it expanded, the less its ability to protect itself. Even Huang Jinma, who was locked up in the prison tower, could smell the danger of the three fragrant fragrance restaurant. The three fragrant inn needed a change, and Miaoyu was at the right time. She might fail, and if she failed, she would be smashed to pieces. But if she succeeded, her right to speak in the three fragrant inn would be above the heavenly and heart-fragrant inn, only below the mysterious and lord of the three fragrant inn. Choosing to join Huang Jinma was, of course, safer for now, but only the three fragrant inn could complete Miaoyu's future arrangements. Or in other words, only by holding the three fragrant inn could she have the confidence to fight against the lifeless sect created by Zhang Linchuan in the future. Sinner Lord Huang Jinma was strong, but now it seemed that the potential of Unredeemed City was far less than that of the lifeless sect. And because of the Tao fruit, Zhang Linchuan would never let her go. She knew from the beginning that she could hide for a while, but not forever. So she would face it, just like the little girl who was among the dire beasts in the beginning. She chose to wipe her tears and pick up the dagger. Chapter 642. After reaching an agreement, Miaoyu left alone. Huang Jin stood alone in the tall building for a long time. In the end, she only sighed. Is there a gray moon in the world? Is there a gray moon in the world? Is there a bright moon hiding the mountains and rivers? As long as one's own light was dazzling enough, one day, one would be able to hang high in the night sky and illuminate the mountains and rivers. Leaving Zhejiang City, Jiang Wang rushed all the way. He was almost running away, afraid that he couldn't help but turn back and tell Du Yehu the truth. He believed that Du Yehu would grow up one day and be able to use his fist to quell anger. But not now. Far from now. Just like a fierce tiger lying on a barren hill, It had to hide its claws and teeth and endure. 1. This trip back to Zhuang State was also the process of tearing open scars. Those who knew nothing and those who bore everything were equally painful. On the way back to Lingxiao Pavilion, Jiang Wang didn't stop at Fenglin Ghost Realm. Nothing happened on the way, and he reunited with Xiao and in peacefully. In the next few days, Jiang Wang didn't forget to supervise Jiang and while he was cultivating. Of course, after every day's cultivation, he still took Jiang and a play everywhere. In a few days, the brother and sister visited all the famous places in the Yun country and tasted all the famous delicacies. Yi Qingyu occasionally went with them, but most of the time, she was preparing for Qi and Shan. Happy times were always short, especially for Jiang and because the time for Qi and Shan to open the mountain had finally come. On this day, Jiang Wang stood in a cloud corridor and waited. Jiang Yin was in her small room, struggling with a stack of copybooks that her brother had just bought. At least during the time when Qi and Shan was opening the mountain, she shouldn't have much free time to cause trouble. A breeze blew, and the master of Lingxiao Pavilion floated in. He looked around and asked, Xiang Fengqi, that useless disciple left? Of course, Yi Lingxiao recognized Xiang Fengqi's master, and Xiang Fengqi had indeed left a deep impression on him. Jiang Wang froze for a moment before he realized who Yi Lingxiao was talking about. He couldn't help but be a little unhappy. Xiang Fengqi is not useless. You're his friend, so you can't hear the truth. Yi Lingxiao frowned. What kind of person is Xiang Fengqi? As his disciple, he didn't have any fighting spirit at all. If he's not trash, then what is he? He didn't have any ill intentions. It was just that he was proud by nature and couldn't bear to see people who didn't want to forge ahead. In particular, his master, Xiang Fengqi, had left a deep impression on him. But sometimes, even if there was no malice, it was still very hurtful. Even if Xiang Qian was frustrated, he didn't want to lose face for his master in High Heaven Pavilion. Presumably, Xiang Fengqi, who was invincible in the insightful truth realm, had considerable respect for Yi Lingxiao. Rather than saying that he cared about Yi Lingxiao's opinion, it was more accurate to say that he cared about Xiang Fengqi. She cared about Xiang Fengqi's reputation. Jiang Wang said seriously, You haven't experienced his life, so please don't judge him. Oh, Yi Lingxiao raised his beautiful but suddenly sharp eyes. You're teaching me how to do things? Jiang Wang felt that he and this High Heaven Pavilion master were somewhat incompatible. Why was it that every time they met, it was like they were going to fight? But no matter what, he couldn't ignore someone slandering his friend in front of him. Jiang Wang wouldn't dare. But Xiang Qian is definitely not trash. If you don't believe me, you can wait for 2 or 3 years. Huh? Yi Lingxiao sneered. However, this sneer suddenly took a turn and turned into a hearty laugh. He laughed warmly and even patted Jiang Wang's shoulder. You're not bad, kid. You'll have to trouble yourself on this trip to Mount Qiyan. Jiang Wang originally didn't understand, but when he saw Yi Qingyu flying over, he understood. So he smiled and said, I will, father. Yi Qingyu flew to his side and said suspiciously, Didn't you say that I would be responsible for Mount Qiyan? Ah, yes. Yi Lingxiao's smile at this time came from his heart and was unusually gentle. Our Qingyu has grown up. It's time for her to take charge. Then what are you doing? I'll see you off. The overbearing Yi Lingxiao would probably only show such a submissive side in front of his daughter. No need. You've seen me off for 1,000 miles, but in the end, we must part. Yi Qingyu waved her hand. Please go back. All right. Then, Heroine Yi, please take care. Yi Lingxiao looked at Jiang Wang in passing. Young hero Jiang, please be careful. No matter how slow Jiang Wang was, he could tell that Yi Lingxiao's be careful was probably not asking him to be careful of Mount Qiyan's danger. He nodded honestly. Please rest assured, Pavilion Master Yi. Let's go. Yi Qingyu was very straightforward and directly soared up. Jiang Wang also hurriedly followed. After the two flew far away, the sea of clouds rolled over and over, and a strange beast squeezed out. It was said to be strange because it was covered in cloud patterns, but had a single horn on its head. Its body was 3 feet long, and its fur was as long as velvet. Its 4 feet stepped on the clouds, and its long tail was tied with a colorless water ball. It stood in front of Yiling Xiao and said in human language, "If Mount Qiyun wants to be sure, it's not impossible. Is this young man reliable?" Children can't lie. They can only be used as a mirror to reflect the adults around them. To be able to teach and unlike that is enough to show Jiang Wang's character. Yiling Xiao said slowly, "As for his strength, Qi's people have already seen it very clearly." The strange beast laughed softly and said, "He doesn't seem to be afraid of you. Is Qianjiao so arrogant? He dares to talk back in front of a Dao master? It's not that he's not afraid of me. It's that he has some persistence and knows his limits. It's not easy for him to know his limits at this age. It sounds like you admire him a lot." The strange beast seemed to be deep in thought. Yiling Xiao smiled. His smile was handsome and charming. Unfortunately, there was only this strange beast in front of him, so he couldn't really admire it. The Cloud-Top Immortal Palace's inheritance is unique, and the divine ability is a rare treasure in the world. To obtain the Cloud Seal divine ability, the first point is that you can't kill people. So although I've arranged a lot of experiential training for Qingyu, she's never truly experienced life and death. In a true confrontation, she'll definitely be at a disadvantage. With a teammate like Jiang Wang who has both strength and brains, both persistence and propriety, the chances of this trip are great. The Cloud-Top Immortal Palace is particular about unintentional fate. Do you still remember that forward maxim? It's called unintentional fate. The more one rushes for the inheritance, the less chance there is. The strange beast knew that the chance he spoke of wasn't just Cloud Seal. It couldn't help but muffled, "Don't meddle too much." Yiling Xiao laughed proudly. "How could I not know? Don't worry, my Qingyu is like me. She's good-looking and talented. She'll definitely obtain Cloud Seal. She'll also definitely be able to—" "Cloud Seal," the strange beast grunted. "This divine ability hasn't appeared in the world for several hundred years already. It's really nostalgic." "Yeah." Yiling Xiao followed with a sigh. "I didn't know the rules back then. Otherwise, I would have taken it long ago. Why would I wait for Qingyu to grow up?" The strange beast mercilessly exposed him. "If it wasn't for me back then, you would have been. If it wasn't for me, you would have lost your head, all right?" "Acho!" Yiling Xiao retorted disdainfully. "Yi Xiaohua, you heartless bastard." The strange beast was also angry. "Didn't I almost lose my head because I saved you? You don't have the ability, yet you love to brag. The moment you went, you asked others to join you. In the end, they beat you up so badly. If it wasn't for me, I don't have the ability." Yiling Xiao jumped over and grabbed Ah Chao's horn. Like a scoundrel, he changed the topic and said angrily, "If I don't teach you a lesson today, you won't know how powerful I am." The strange beast called Acho was unable to restrain its anger. It swung its long tail and stirred up the sea of clouds. "Yi Xiaohua, try and touch me." Before it finished speaking, it took a punch. "Ouch!" Yiling Xiao directly threw Acho far away. He rolled up his sleeves and jumped into the sea of clouds. But the clouds rolled, and the situation couldn't be seen clearly. Only Ah Chao's voice could be heard continuously. It roared continuously. "I'll fight it out with you. Ouch! 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 Let go, my hair is broken." If you have the ability, don't rely on your cultivation level. Finally, Yiling Xiao's arrogant laughter could be heard. "I don't have the ability. So what? P.S. Just like a fierce tiger lying on a barren hill, concealing its claws and teeth and enduring." From the water margin, Song Zhang's West River Moon, but when used here, the meaning was different. Chapter 643. The Qichang Mountain Range was a natural barrier between Zhuang and Yong. The reason why Zhuang Chengxian was able to establish himself was not only because of the chaos in Yong, but also because of the geographical advantage. In the Qichang Mountain Range, there were wild beasts and monsters. Even for a new transcendent cultivator, it was considered dangerous. Of course, Jiang Wang now knew that in the transcendent world, monsters were almost equivalent to resources. It seemed that the friction between Zhuang and Yong at the border for many years was also a competition for resources. Speaking of which, this was the first time Jiang Wang came to the Qichang mountain range. When he was in Tangxi town, he only glanced at it from afar, and that simple and honest Hang Dun was no longer there. Flying over the Qichang mountain range, Yi Qingyu deliberately observed Jiang Wang's expression. After all, Zhuang's territory was already in sight. She was afraid that Jiang Wang's mind would be disturbed. But Jiang Wang's expression didn't change. "Did you come with your friend a few days ago?" Yi Qingyu asked. Jiang Wang only said, "Don't tell him. I told her that I went to another place to do something." Yi Qingyu nodded. The matter of Maplewood City was indeed not a good topic to talk about. It was the same for Jiang Wang and Jiang Inan. Neither Zhuang nor Yong had stationed troops in the Qichang mountain range, because no matter which country, they would not allow the other to do so. There were a total of 4 forces participating in the Battle of Qiyun Mountain: Lingshao Pavilion, Qingyun Pavilion, Ethereal Palace, Yunyuan. When Jiang Wang followed Yi Qingyu to the destination, there were already people waiting there. There were 2 distinct groups of people, 2 on each side, one in the north and one in the south. Judging from their clothes, they should be the inheritors of Qingyun Pavilion and Ethereal Palace, because their clothes were obviously of Yong and Chengdi styles. The people of Yong were very conservative and followed the tradition. Their clothes were usually green and gray. The people of Chengdi were somewhat influenced by the southern region, especially the people of Chu, and wore more colorful clothes. This group of people looked more arrogant than the other, and their eyes grew on top of their heads. No one spoke. Jiang Wang and Yi Qingyu didn't squeeze over to exchange greetings. Or rather, this was actually a form of sobriety. There was no need to exchange pleasantries with competitors. They were now in the depths of the Qichang mountain range. Occasionally, they would see demonic beasts passing by. However, demonic beasts were not as irrational as ferocious beasts. Most of them had some intelligence, and they would stay far away from these cultivators who seemed to be difficult to deal with. 3 parties came from 4 directions, waiting for the old man Yunyu. Jiang Wang could understand the mysteriousness of old man Yunyu. From his point of view, among the parties involved in Qi and Shan, only elder Yunyu had a single son for each generation. Without any influence, it would be easy for them to be dealt with due to factors outside of the game. Therefore, no matter how cautious they were, they could never be too cautious. The mystery itself was a form of protection. The Ethereal Palace was originally not weak. Yi Qingyu transmitted her voice to Jiang Wang and explained to him. She then looked in the direction of the Zhuang country and said, "Originally, it occupied this piece of land. Its status was similar to that of Lingshao Pavilion in the Yun Nation. However, he was crippled by Zhuang Chengqian, then a general of the Yong Kingdom, and had no choice but to flee to the Cheng Kingdom. After that, Zhuang Chengqian directly occupied this place and established the Zhuang country." Jiang Wang did not expect the Ethereal Palace to have such a connection with the Zhuang country. It even involved the establishment of the Zhuang country. He could not help but sigh and say, the great ancestor of the Zhuang dynasty was indeed a man of great talent and vision. As a native of the Zhuang country, he would not deny the greatness of the great ancestor of the Zhuang country, Zhuang Chengqian. After all, he was a legendary figure who had been influenced by him since he was young. However, this did not affect his hatred for the current Zhuang emperor, Zhuang Gaoxian. Yes, Yi Qingyu also said, it's a pity she did not say what was a pity. Even if her standpoint was completely on Jiang Wang's side, she could not say that Zhuang Gaoxian was an incompetent and muddle-headed emperor. Especially now, Zhuang Gaoxian was actually creating the resurgence of the Zhuang country. She felt it was a pity that the Zhuang country gave up on Jiang Wang and made Jiang Wang suffer so much. It was a pity that Jiang Ainin left her hometown at a young age. It's not a pity. Jiang Wang was very calm. He looked around and asked, how long do we have to wait for Elder Yunyu? Yi Qingyu looked at the sky and said, Elder Yunyu will arrive before sunset at the latest. Because after sunset, Qi Yunshan will not be able to enter. We have no choice but to wait. If any of the four sides are not here, Qi Yunshan will not be able to open it. What if Elder Yunyu is killed? Jiang Wang suddenly thought. Or what if the ethereal palace was completely destroyed by Zhuang Changxian? I don't know. Yi Qingyu shook her head and said, all these years, nothing like what you said has happened. If it really does happen, perhaps the secret of Qi Yunshan will be lost forever. How long has the history of Qi Yunshan been around? Jiang Wang asked. It seems to have existed before the establishment of the Lingxiao Pavilion, Yi Qingyu said. It was very lucky that the inheritance could continue to exist until now despite the harsh conditions to enter. Jiang Wang thought, since ancient times, many powerful inheritances have been lost in the long river of history. For example, if something happened to the top swordsmanship of the era of flying swords, the solipsistic way of the sword could be declared lost. But Qi Yunshan could still be said to be a kind of luck. Perhaps it was not just luck. Could there be some mechanism to ensure the continuation of the inheritance? Jiang Wang asked in the Tongtian Palace. Jiang Yan, do you know Qi Yunshan? Jiang Yan's voice replied, this is a secret of the four sides and must be guarded very strictly. How would I know? None of them believe in the white bone way. Jiang Yan's answer was impeccable, but for some reason, Jiang Wang felt that it was a little strange. Jiang Yan's last sentence was really an unnecessary explanation. He would not have thought in this direction, but now he made the connection. Could Qi Yunshan really be related to the white bone way? Yong, Zhuang, and Yun happen to be the three countries closest to Qi Yunshan. They also happen to be the places where the Azure Cloud Pavilion, Ethereal Hall, and Lingxiao Pavilion were located. Apart from Ethereal Hall being chased away later. But after that, the Ethereal Hall chose to settle down in Cheng, which was southeast of Zhuang, still very close to Qi Yunshan. Could it be said that these three forces were originally guarding Qi Yunshan's inheritance? Thinking about it carefully, when Zhuang was founded, founding ancestor Zhuang Changxian crippled the Ethereal Hall, and the Ethereal Hall, which had Qi Yunshan's inheritance, had no choice but to settle down in Cheng. When founding ancestor Zhuang Changxian was still alive, he did something very famous. When he was in power, he wiped out the White Bone Way. During Zhuang Changxian's reign, wiping out the White Bone Way was the national policy of Zhuang. The White Bone Way also disappeared for a period of time. After hundreds of years of recovery, it was revived under the leadership of Ouyang Lai and Liu Yan. They wanted to refine the White Bone Way elixir and let the White Bone Way Taoist reach the peak of transcendent in one step. But in the process, they were schemed against and robbed of the White Bone Way elixir and were crippled again. But there were records that the previous attack on the White Bone Way was led by Zhuang Changxian. Zhuang Changxian wiping out the White Bone Way elixir and Zhuang Changxian crippling the Ethereal Hall. Could these two events be related? Could the White Bone God know Qi Yunshan's secret because of this? Did Jiang Yan really know nothing? P.S. I'll be recommending it tomorrow. Really, from 600 to almost 1,000. If you don't recommend it soon, I'm going to shut myself out. My dear readers, these few days, subscribe more, vote more, and recommend this book to your friends. Let's make the recommendation look better. I'll also work hard to write a better account of Qi Yunshan's trip. I have 2 ideas for the ending of this volume, and I'm still weighing them. Chapter 644. Jiang Wang instinctively felt that Jiang Yan was hiding something, but he also knew that if Jiang Yan was determined to hide it, he wouldn't be able to uncover the answer. After interacting with Jiang Yan for so long, he had a certain understanding of each other. But it was clear that Jiang Yan's understanding of him far exceeded his understanding of Jiang Yan. This was why even though Jiang Wang had established the first inner residence, he was still very cautious around Jiang Yan. As time passed, the Firmament Pavilion, Azure Cloud Pavilion, and Ethereal Hall all arrived early. Only the mysterious Cloud Wanderer didn't seem to care about Qi Yunshan at all. It was hard not to wonder if he had met with an accident. As the successor, Yi Qingyu wasn't in a hurry. She transmitted her voice and chatted with Jiang Wang. Those from the Azure Cloud Pavilion and Ethereal Hall also maintained their patience. Fortunately, Cloud Wanderer finally arrived before nightfall. A cloud drifted over from the horizon. As it neared, the figure on the cloud was discovered. This person wore a straw raincoat, a bamboo hat, and a gray cloth covering his face. He looked very mysterious. Stepping on the cloud, he hovered in front of Jiang Wang and Yi Qingyu. No more nonsense. Let's begin. He was very direct and immediately took the lead. What was surprising was that his voice was very old. Every time Qi Yunshan opened, only those born in the last 33 years could enter. But this voice sounded like an old man in his 70s or 80s. On the Azure Cloud Pavilion side was a man and a woman. The woman dressed conservatively, but couldn't hide her voluptuous breasts. She was practically wrapped around the man. The man raised his eyebrows at Cloud Wanderer. Can you still enter Qi Yunshan at your age? Don't waste my time. According to Yi Qingyu's introduction, the woman was the successor of the Azure Cloud Pavilion. The man was a young genius of Yong, surnamed Jiao and named Xiong. He was tall and had dark skin. It was said that he was very famous. Don't worry, Cloud Wanderer replied. My voice is mature, but I'm very young. I might even be younger than you. On the Ethereal Hall side was a man and a woman. The inheritor of the Ethereal Palace was also a woman. Although she wore gorgeous clothes, she seemed more reserved than the plump woman from the Blue Cloud Pavilion. She kept a certain distance from the helper she had invited, and the helper she asked was a somewhat thin man. Yi Qingyu didn't know which genius of the Chung state he was. Anyway, Yi Qingyu didn't have any relevant information. Hearing old cloud travelers reply, the Ethereal Palace's inheritor smiled and said, If you can't do it, then don't force yourself. How about you leave first when Qi Yunshan opens? I'm afraid that you'll be blown away by the wind and fall to your death on the spot. Qi Yunshan's inheritance will then be severed. Out of everyone present, only Old Cloud Traveler had come alone, so no one would underestimate him. The reason why the Azure Cloud Pavilion and the Ethereal Palace were working together to target him was actually to test his strength. Jiang Wang knew this very well, and so did Yunyu Wang. Old man Yunyu did not respond, or rather, his response was the hand seals that he was forming. He did not intend to fight. Yi Qingyu had also mastered a similar set of seals. It was the seal to open Qi Yunshan. Today, the four parties who came to Qi Yunshan each mastered a set of mountain-opening seals. Together, they could open Qi Yunshan. However, this set of seals had to be accompanied by the inheritance of each party and could only be activated with a unique Dao energy. It did not mean that the seals could be passed to just anyone. This way, the inheritance would always be in the hands of the four parties. After all, the sky was slowly darkening, and there was not much time to waste. Following Old Cloud Traveler's actions, the others also gave up on probing and began to form hand seals. As the seals were completed, a cloud appeared in the four directions of north, south, east, and west. It was white, green, black, and red in four colors. Its shape was extremely beautiful. You can't see these four-colored clouds outside Qichang Mountain. You can only see them here. Yi Qingyu still had time to explain to Jiang Wang while maintaining the seals. This was probably a kind of restriction to keep it secret. Jiang Wang could completely understand. However, if the four-colored clouds appeared in the sky but could not be seen from the outside, did it mean that these four-colored clouds might not appear in the sky of the modern realm? Had this place already entered another space? Jiang Wang did not have to think for too long. As soon as the four-colored clouds appeared, they quickly gathered together. The four clouds tangled together and then exploded silently. Like a circle formed by the four-colored clouds, it quickly expanded and soon surrounded everyone present in the circle. Jiang Wang's vision blurred and the scenery changed. Within his field of vision, there stood a tall mountain. Halfway up the mountain, it was shrouded in clouds and could not be seen clearly. The 7 people who participated in the meeting of Qi Yunshan were scattered at the foot of the mountain. Behind them was a four-color cloud gate. Once they stepped out of the gate, they would be able to leave this place. It was still Old Cloud Traveler who spoke first. He seemed to enjoy being in control of the situation. Using the usual feeble voice of an old man, he said, "See you at the top of the mountain." Jiang Wang did not have any objections. He did not know much about Qi Yinshan. For some reason, Yiling Xiao did not give Yi Qingyu too much information. Now that nothing had happened, it was not too late to start the competition after learning about this place first. Unfortunately, not everyone was able to reach an agreement. I say, let's end it here. Jiao Xiong of Yong flashed in front of Qi Yunshan, blocking Old Cloud Traveler and the others. He looked at the others present, his gaze disdainful. You have also entered Qi Yunshan and seen the scenery here. You should be satisfied. Let's end here, how about it? Jiang Wang did not say anything. He even tugged at Yi Qingyu's sleeve and retreated a few steps. He was used to keeping a low profile. Letting these people fight first to see the depth of their strength was also good. Yi Qingyu also tacitly retreated, without any thoughts of showing off. But unfortunately, Lingxiao Pavilion's strength was displayed here. Even if they wanted to keep a low profile, they could not. Jiao Xiong's gaze passed over Old Cloud Traveler, who refused to budge an inch, and the two from the ethereal hall who were eager to try. Unexpectedly, his gaze fell on Yi Qingyu and Jiang Wang. You did not want to leave? Jiang Wang pointed behind Old Cloud Traveler, indicating whether he could first deal with the one in front of him. Unexpectedly, Old Cloud Traveler suddenly turned and looked over. Qingyan Pavilion wants us to stop here. What do you two from Lingxiao Pavilion think? At least in Qi Yinshan, Lingxiao Pavilion being too strong was not a good thing. Because no matter how strong the outside world was, they could not pull Yi Lingxiao in. And precisely because they were strong in the outside world, they could easily become the target of public criticism. Now, even the thin man from the ethereal hall who was eager to give it a try had settled down. Everyone was willing to sit on the mountain and watch the tigers fight. Jiao Xiong stood out only because of his strong self-confidence from Yong. Today, although Yong had been in decline for a long time, it was still much stronger than Yun and Cheng. The people of Yong did not even feel that they had weakened much. Their target of comparison was always Jing and Qin. They were unwilling to compare themselves with Chu. After all, Chu had just suffered a crushing defeat in the Valley Plains and was greatly weakened. They maintained their traditions because they could not forget their past glory. Jiao Xiong was able to stand out in Yong. Dealing with the young cultivators of Yun and Cheng was naturally not a problem. Old Cloud Traveler was a rogue cultivator who had prematurely aged himself, so there was nothing to worry about. However, among these crooked melons and cracked dates, Lingxiao Pavilion was always the biggest threat. After all, Yi Lingxiao's prestige was there. Therefore, although Jiao Xiong was actually blocking Old Cloud Traveler, his first target was Lingxiao Pavilion. Now, everyone's eyes were on the two from Lingxiao Pavilion. That, if you must ask my opinion, Jiang Wang said with a sincere expression. I think, since it's the first time we meet, it's better not to fight. It's too damaging to the harmony. Chapter 645. Human nature was really strange. Sometimes kindness would be seen as weakness, and sincerity would be seen as stupidity. At least now, Jiao Xiong was laughing because of this stupidity. What? Do you think this is a conflict between neighbors? Saying a few good words will make them let you go? Jiang Wang was very distressed. As soon as he entered Qi Yunshan, he encountered Jiao Xiong without even seeing anything. It was really not in line with his low-key style. But Jiao Xiong was determined to cause trouble for Lingxiao Pavilion, and they had no way to avoid it. So many neighbors are here. It's not good to be seen as a joke. Jiang Wang still wanted to try harder. Jiao Xiong sneered and didn't even look at Jiang Wang. Instead, he looked at Yi Qingyu. Missy, why don't you come over to my side? I'll give you a share of Qi Yunshan's harvest. Yi Qingyu smiled elegantly. Qiyu doesn't have any objections? Jiao Xiong's tone was domineering. Everything is up to me. The woman named Qiyu was the inheritor of the Azure Cloud Pavilion. Hearing this, she even squeezed out a smile. It seemed that she had already been disciplined into obedience. Yi Qingyu didn't comment. She only looked at Jiang Wang mischievously. "Young master, what do you think?" Jiang Wang said with a bitter face. "This isn't good, right?" Jiao Xiong reached out to the side, and Yun Yuwang was also pushed aside very cooperatively. He faced Jiang Wang. "Tell me your name." Jiao Xiong don't kill nameless people." Looking at his posture, it seemed that he wanted to directly attack. Jiao Xiong suppressed everyone's confidence. Otherwise, he wouldn't have targeted everyone as soon as he opened his mouth. However, it was naturally better to attack them one by one. Jiang Wang helplessly but politely cupped his hands. "Well said. I'm Duga Wudi." He didn't want to be famous in front of the people of Yong and Cheng. He had already used the name Zhang Linchuan once in Wangjiang City. He was afraid that it would be connected to Lingxiao Pavilion. Therefore, he changed to Duga Wudi. Jiao Xiong said coldly, "What a big tone." Jiang Wang continued to sigh. "My parents are arrogant. Don't blame me. Don't your parents know that a lowly name is easy to raise? I'm afraid you won't live long with this name of yours." Jiao Xiong didn't necessarily look down on Jiang Wang, but since he wanted to target Jiang Wang, enraging the opponent was obviously a well-tested strategy. Jiang Wang pretended to be suddenly enlightened. "So that's why you're called Butt-Face?" Jiao Xiong had wanted to provoke Jiang Wang, but he was the one who got angry first. He raised his foot and was about to attack. However, at this time, there was a faint sound of a bell ringing on Qiyun Mountain. Clang, clang, the bell rang abruptly and then quietly disappeared. Everyone knew that something was happening on Qiyun Mountain. Jiao Xiong did not go up the mountain immediately, but he still blocked the way and did not allow others to go up first. On the surface, he looked down on all his opponents and was confident, but in reality, he was still cautious. This caution was mainly for old man Yunyu. In his opinion, Duga Wudi was the most cowardly and the weakest. The skinny man invited by the ethereal palace was eager to give it a try. He should have a certain level of strength. As for Yun Yuwang, he came alone and acted mysteriously. They needed to be vigilant. Of course, they were all repulsive and were far from being as strong as the opponents he had encountered in the Yong Kingdom. Although he still looked coldly at Jiang Wang, he was also observing the others. "I'll teach you that only lowly commoners should use lowly names." Jiang Wang was very sincere. "Please don't say that about yourself. You might not be able to win against people like Cheng Gung Sheng, Su Xiangqian, and Ku Ju in a quarrel, but after being influenced by them for a long time, he was not weak." Jiao Xiong was so angry that the veins on his forehead were throbbing. Even if he had other things on his mind, it was still somewhat unbearable. The successor of the Azure Cloud Pavilion, Qi Yu, shrieked from the side. "Jiao Xiong is one of the top 15 geniuses of the Yong Kingdom's younger generation. Who do you think you are to dare speak with such an attitude?" This woman didn't seem to think before she spoke. Jiang Wang was too lazy to pay attention to her and only looked at Yi Qingyu. "Is the 15th genius of the Yong Kingdom's younger generation very strong?" Yi Qingyu held back her laughter and answered seriously, "I only know that the second-ranked genius of the Yong Kingdom was easily defeated by Zhu Weiwa of the Zhuang Kingdom in a 2-on-1 battle in Buyao City." "Oh," Jiang Wang dragged out this sound, dragging it out with deep meaning. But before Jiao Xiong's face completely darkened, he stopped speaking and looked coldly at him. "Jiao Shiwu, are you going to make a move or not? If not, don't stop me from going up the mountain." The bell of Mount Qiyunshan had already rung. Jiang Wang was no longer interested in playing along with Jiao Xiong. After all, this person was too shameless. "I am Jiao Xiong." Jiao Xiong glared fiercely at Yun Yuwang and the two people from the ethereal palace, intending to deter them and dispel their thoughts of sneaking up Mount Qiyunshan. Then, he glared back at Jiang Wang. "Even if you want to court death, don't be in such a hurry." He didn't know what he was waiting for. He kept hooting and didn't make a move. Jiang Wang was too lazy to wait any longer. The raised eyebrows sword was unsheathed. There seemed to be the sound of wind whistling in his ears. It was like a stream of light streaking across in front of him. Sauvignon Blanc leaped out of the water. He was so fast that his movements couldn't be seen clearly. It was as if he and his long sword had always been in front of Jiao Xiong. It was as if Jiang Wang had only lightly stabbed forward. The tip of the sword pointed like the setting sun falling. The old general sword of twilight was the most tragic and decisive sword style of the human Dao sword. The sword collided, irreversible. Jiao Xiong was a powerhouse of 3 palaces. A 21-year-old powerhouse of 3 palaces was naturally considered a genius. Even someone as talented as Zhang Linchuan had only opened 4 palaces when he was in Maplewood City. Facing Jiang Wang's sudden sword, Jiao Xiong also attacked. His sword was heavy and wide. When he slashed out, it was like a great river. The torrential current was unstoppable. It collided with Sauvignon Blanc. The sword momentum driven by the 3 palaces was instantly scattered by the old general. His sword was not as good as Sauvignon Blanc, and his sword momentum was not as good as the old general. His Tantian Palace was far less majestic than Jiang Wang's. His heaven and earth isolated island was far less vast than Jiang Wang's. Although he had opened 3 palaces, the total number of rooms in the 3 palaces added together did not reach 3,000. In the void, 2 pitch-black chains drilled out like dragons, instantly binding Jiao Xiong, who had lost control of his sword momentum. The chains temporarily shackled all of Jiao Xiong's resistance. Sauvignon Blanc directly pierced through, breaking through the Tantian Palace and the 3 palaces in succession, extinguishing Jiao Xiong's life force. Early on in the soaring dragon realm, Jiang Wang and Cheng Gengsheng had worked together to kill the Rizhao prefectural governor who had opened up 2 palaces. Although it was a surprise attack at that time, and that prefectural governor was after all old and frail. But today's Jiang Wang was more than several times stronger than back then. The current Jiang Wang had even fought a life and death battle with Hai Zhongming, who was at the peak of the outer sect. Facing an ordinary inner sect cultivator like Jiao Xiong was no pressure at all. It was fine if he didn't make a move, but once he made a move, he would kill them all. Qi Yu of the Azure Cloud Pavilion was indescribably horrified. She had never imagined that Jiao Xiong, who should have been able to suppress all opponents in front of these small cultivators, would die so easily. To her, Jiao Xiong was just a tool that she had tricked. Even if he didn't die now, she would find a way to kill him later. But after all, it was impossible for her to kill him so easily. This man named Dugu Wudi was too strong. She quickly made the decision to join forces with the other 2 to fight for a chance of victory. But after Jiang Wang killed Jiao Xiong, he did not hesitate at all. With a shake of his hand, the shadow of a whip lashed out. The 3 of you still don't want to help. If this continues, we will all be killed. Qiyu grabbed the whip and shouted anxiously. But as soon as she grabbed it, she felt that something was wrong. That wasn't a whip but a rope. The dragon imprisoning rope instantly wrapped around Qiyu's body and tied her up on the spot. The dragon imprisoning rope was a treasure that Hai Zhongming relied on. It was extremely useful even against outer sect cultivators. Its characteristic was that it would bind anyone who touched it, and those who did not know about it would easily be at a disadvantage. Qiyu was restrained on the spot. Under the dragon imprisoning rope's binding, her voluptuous figure became increasingly hot. She wriggled on the ground and instantly changed her attitude. Her charming eyes were like silk as she breathed delicately and said, "Young Master Dugu, we may have misunderstood. The Azure Cloud Pavilion is willing." The long sword swept across, and a delicate and beautiful head rolled down. Chapter 646. It didn't matter if she was from 1 residence, 2 residences, or 3 residences. It didn't matter if she was a man, a woman, or a beauty. Since they had decided to fight, they had to fight to the death. There was no need to give her a chance to show off, and there was no possibility of mercy. Jiang Wang knew very well that once he revealed his strength, he would be besieged. Regardless of anything else, reason would lead to this result. After all, he was probably the strongest among these people. There was no need to be humble about this. The most arrogant and domineering person, Jiao Xiong, who wanted to fight 1 against 3, was eliminated so easily. The Azure Cloud Pavilion's team was declared finished. Perhaps many people didn't expect this. However, not a single one of the people present was surprised by this. It was unknown whether they were too confident or they were too good at hiding their emotions. Jiang Wang was more inclined to the former, so he secretly increased his vigilance. The thin man invited by the successor of the Ethereal Hall was the first to step forward. Shackles, Qin Fa, Jing Fa. Jiang Wang only knew that the three punishment palaces of legalism were divided into heaven, earth, and man. He didn't know there were so many factions within legalism. However, what surprised him more was this person's accent. "You're not from Cheng?" Cheng and Zhuang were neighbors. Jiang Wang had interacted with some people from Cheng before. This person's accent was completely different. "He's from Chu." Yi Qingyu looked at the successor of the Ethereal Hall. "Zhongqin, is your Ethereal Hall going to submit to Chu, even at the expense of severing your heritage?" Her words made sense. Needless to say, the Cloud Pavilion was in Yun. Although the Azure Cloud Pavilion also submitted to Yong, it could still maintain its independent heritage. However, if the Ethereal Hall betrayed Cheng and submitted to Chu, it would almost certainly be swallowed up. There was no other reason other than the difference in strength. With Chu's strength, the Ethereal Hall couldn't possibly remain a secret. Zhongqin didn't seem embarrassed at all. Instead, she smiled and said, "The Ethereal Hall doesn't submit to Chu, but to Sir Domian." The Dou family was a prominent family name in Chu. It wasn't inferior to the Zhuo family of Zhuo and Zhuo Guangshu. Domian was able to conquer the Ethereal Hall partly because of his family background, but his own strength couldn't be underestimated. At this moment, Jiang Wang understood that the Ethereal Hall's Zhongqin's expression was not reserved, but reverence. Domian clasped his hands behind his back and looked straight at Yi Qingyu. "What's the matter? Does Tower of Cloud have an opinion of Great Chu?" Yi Qingyu was very calm. "Cloud Tower has always been neutral. We don't have any opinions about anyone, including Qin Chu. However, Qi Yinshan is related to our sex inheritance." "Young Master Dou, please don't force our sect to have an opinion." Sir Domian. Without waiting for Domian to speak, Jiang Wang looked in Qi Yunshan's direction. "Are you sure you want to compete with me here? The fisherman has already gone up the mountain. When the sandpiper and the clam fight, the fisherman benefits." When Jiang Wang and Domian were confronting each other, Elder Yun had already disappeared. Presumably, he had already sneaked into Qi Yunshan. Domian was a decisive person. Hearing this, he turned around and headed straight for Qi Yun Mountain. Jiang Wang took back the dragon imprisoning rope and took away the storage boxes on Jiao Xiong and Qi Yu. While going up the mountain with Yi Qingyu, he asked, "You don't look well. Why?" Yi Qingyu shook her head and said apologetically, "I'm sorry. I just saw you behead Qi Yu. I've never killed anyone before, so I'm not used to it." When Domian and Zhongqin were around, Yi Qingyu could still suppress her discomfort. Now that only the two of them were behind her, she couldn't hide it anymore. Having never killed anyone before, it was indeed difficult for her to face life and death. Previously at the Beast battlefield in Three Mountain City, she lost her composure and was in danger. This was probably one of the reasons. "There's nothing wrong with this." Jiang Wang didn't stop walking and said naturally, "You have the freedom to not kill. In a world of cannibalism, this is something to be envied." No matter what reason Yi Lingxiao had for not letting Yi Qingyu face life and death, Jiang Wang could understand. If possible, he would never want Jiang Anan to be stained with blood. Killing was never something to be proud of. Those who kill also need to be aware of the fact that they will be killed. Jiang Wang himself wasn't fond of killing, but if you don't kill, others will kill you. Sometimes, there was no choice. After all, he didn't have an elder like Yi Lingxiao who could shelter him from the wind and rain. However, if Yi Lingxiao intended for Yi Qingyu to take over High Heaven Pavilion in the future, it would be impossible for her to face life and death like now. "Thank you, I've been greatly relieved," Yi Qingyu said softly. "You're welcome." Jiang Wang looked at the environment on the mountain and asked, "Do you feel that there's something wrong with Qi Yun Mountain?" Yi Qingyu also noticed it. After thinking for a moment, she said hesitantly. The clouds on the mountain are a bit strange. Everything on Qian Mountain was obviously normal, including the stones and trees, including the sky and wind, but the layer of clouds that shrouded Qian Mountain seemed to have never moved. Clouds were easily affected by the wind, and it was difficult for them to stay in one place. This didn't make sense. After careful observation, Jiang Wang found that the clouds outside the mountain were actually moving, but unusually slowly, as if they had never moved at all. The name Qian Mountain seemed to have a specific meaning. In fact, the abnormality on Qian Mountain was the reason why he sat back and watched Master Yunyu go up the mountain first. It's not just the clouds, Jiang Wang said. From the time we came in until now, the position of the sun has not moved, or it's moving too slowly, making it impossible to observe. Yi Qingyu was extremely clever and immediately guessed. Time in the mountain is faster than outside the mountain. Because in the early years when he pursued Cloud Top Immortal Palace, he obtained the prophecy of unintentional fate. In order to let Yi Qingyu smoothly obtain the inheritance of Cloud Top Immortal Palace, Yi Lingxiao deliberately did not disclose any information about Cloud Top Immortal Palace to her. Like Jiang Wang, she also needed to find the answer from nothing. If it's not an illusion, there's probably only one explanation. Jiang Wang said. This was the first time he had encountered a situation where the flow of time was different. While feeling novel, he was also particularly vigilant. There was no lack of legends that a day in the mountain is 1,000 years in the world. He did not want to be old when he left Qian Mountain, because the two people of the Azure Cloud Pavilion had already died at the foot of the mountain. They were the third group of people to go up the mountain, and also the last group. So while maintaining vigilance, they also moved forward very quickly. But after walking for a long time, they still did not see any trace of Dou Mian, Zhongqin, or Elder Yunyu. Were they split up in different directions, or were they all moving forward at full speed? This Qian Mountain, they did not know how high it was, how long it would take to reach the top, and what they would encounter on the way up the mountain. Are we too slow? Yi Qingyu asked. There's no way, Jiang Wang said. We don't understand the situation of Qian Mountain. If we go faster, we can't guarantee our safety. I thought you had observed some clues, so you needed to stop at the foot of the mountain. If it's just for safety reasons. As Yi Qingyu spoke, she took out a small chariot from her storage jade pendant and threw it forward. The storage jade pendant itself was already an ancient object. Compared to the popular storage box now, it was more difficult to make and also more rare. Just this storage jade pendant alone was worth a lot, and this small chariot was even more luxurious. What appeared in front of the two was an exceptionally gorgeous chariot with a 7-colored flag. Two extremely majestic cloud, striding heavenly horses were pulling the chariot in front, neighing loudly. Jiang Wang followed Yi Qingyu onto the chariot in a daze. The blue flag on the chariot unfolded, and a layer of blue light covered the entire chariot, giving off a sense of security. Yi Qingyu waved the green flag, and the cloud, striding heavenly horses, immediately rushed out. Jiang Wang felt that for the first time, he truly understood what did it mean to have no scruples and be as fast as lightning. Chapter 647. The gorgeous chariot sped along the mountain path, but it never touched the ground. The scenery flashed by. If not for Jiang Wang's high cultivation, it would have been hard for him to see what was passing by. There were indeed many obstacles on Qian Mountain, most of them cloud beasts. It was similar to Yi Qingyu's cloud beast secret technique, but it was completely out of Yi Qingyu's control. In other words, Lingxiao Pavilion's cloud beast secret technique came from Qian Mountain. The cloud beasts on Qian Mountain were, of course, much stronger than Yi Qingyu's cloud beasts. They appeared and disappeared unpredictably, attacking from all kinds of unexpected positions. But in front of this chariot with the 7-colored flag, they were all mere decorations. Often, by the time the cloud beast jumped out, the chariot had already passed by. If not for Jiang Wang's good eyesight, he might not have noticed that he had been attacked. Occasionally, Cloud Beast would bump into him and attack. But from beginning to end, the blue light shield did not move at all. Jiang Wang even wondered if he could break the blue light shield if he attacked with all his strength. How long would it take? And in terms of speed, once the chariot started, it would be hard to catch up unless he used Flame Meteor consecutively. No wonder Yi Ling Xiao let Yi Qingyu, who had not opened her inner palace, come to Qi Yun Mountain. This chariot alone was enough to make her invincible. If she was not strong enough, she could make up for it with artifacts. Noticing Jiang Wang's emotional expression, Yi Qingyu explained somewhat embarrassedly. This is the cloud chariot with the 7-colored flag. The 7-colored flag represents 7 functions. My father got it long ago and left it for me to protect myself. Good treasure, Jiang Wang praised. Yi Qingyu took out a unique birdcage from her storage jade pendant and gently opened the door. Little skylarks flew out of the cage one after another, as if they were endless. It was hard to imagine how such a small birdcage could contain so many skylarks. Skylark cage. Yi Qingyu continued to explain. These little things are very intelligent. They can help us find those people and the magical fruit. Since entering Qi Yun Mountain, Jiang Wang had subconsciously taken the lead. This was because his battle prowess was far superior to Yi Qingyu's, and his experience was also much richer than Yi Qingyu's. He came here with the intention of helping Yi Qingyu, and he also believed that he could make a better decision. However, Yi Qingyu was already prepared for Qi Yinshan. It was only out of consideration for Jiang Wang's feelings that he allowed Jiang Wang to give orders. It wasn't until the progress was slow and Jiang Wang himself was a little hesitant that she stood up to perform. In her opinion, Jiang Wang, who was famous in Qi and Tianjiao, was inevitably a little egotistical no matter how gentle he was. It was because of this consideration that he had a mentality of accommodating his friends. After all, Jiang Wang came to Qi Yinshan purely to help her. Of course, Jiang Wang wasn't an egotistical person who couldn't tolerate dissent. He was very opinionated, but he was also very willing to listen to others' opinions. Yi Qingyu had a better response, so he was actually happy and relaxed. Seeing the skylark cage, he could only dryly praise, good treasure. Other than this, he could not say anything else. He really didn't understand the world of the rich. He only knew how to be careful, step by step, and rely on strength and flexibility to deal with danger. What driving a safe and high-speed luxury chariot directly through dangerous places? He had no such concept in his mind at all. Cultivators were particular about not being limited by things. Relying too much on external things would affect one's own heart to pursue the Tao. However, Jiang Wang now felt that if there were enough external things, it seemed that whether one had a heart to pursue the Tao was not very important. The 7-colored flag cloud carriage was as fast as lightning, rampaging through Qi Yinshan. After a while, Yi Qingyu said, Yun Xiao has been found. 2 people from the ethereal palace, an old cloud traveler, one in the north and one in the south of the mountain. She held up the skylark cage and closed her eyes as if she could share the skylark's vision. In a half-collapsed pavilion in the south of the mountain, Do Mian seems to be looking for something. In a small pool in the north of the mountain, old cloud traveler is Yun Xiao, has been eliminated. Yi Qingyu opened her eyes. Old cloud traveler also seems to be looking for something in the pool. Where are we going? Their goals are very clear. They seem to be very familiar with this place and have prepared beforehand, which is why they can be so fast. Unlike us, Jiang Wang was somewhat helpless. Is Pavilion Master Yi deliberately making things difficult for us? That's why he doesn't say anything. Yi Qingyu was also somewhat distressed. Sometimes I don't know what he's thinking. He's like a child. Jiang Wang was just casually complaining. He thought for a while and said, sooner or later, we will have to solve this problem. Let's go to the north of the mountain first. I have a rough estimate of Do Mian's strength. Old Cloud Traveler is too mysterious. It's better to find out more about him first. Since they were both in Chu, Do Mian's strength was naturally deduced based on Zhuo Guangshu. Zhuo Guangshu's talent was also top-notch. The Zhou family was similar to the Dou family. Dou Mian himself was not much older than Zhou Guangxu. Even if he was stronger, it should be limited. Of course, this judgment was not necessarily accurate. Jiang Wang was just more worried about old cloud traveler, who was hiding his head but showing his tail. Okay. Yi Qingyu expressed her agreement and steered the seven-colored flag cloud carriage to change direction. Wait. The seven-colored flag cloud carriage was moving at high speed. Yi Qingyu said in surprise, Yun Xiao saw the magical fruit. It's at the top of the mountain. Jiang Wang was also somewhat stunned. First of all, he did not expect to find the magical fruit so easily. Secondly, if the magical fruit was at the top of the mountain, what were Dou Mian and Old Cloud Traveler looking for in those two places? Did Qi Yunshan have other treasures? Or did they not know Qi Yunshan at all? Where do you think we should go? Yi Qingyu asked. Let's go get the magical fruit first. Jiang Wang made a prompt decision. Who cares what they are looking for? Since Yi Qingyu came for the magical ability fruit, then naturally the magical ability fruit took priority. After getting the magical fruit and setting a goal, they would think about other things. The seven-colored flag cloud carriage turned again and went straight to the top of the mountain. Qi Yunshan was very high. Even with the seven-colored flag cloud carriage's speed, it still took a long time to reach it. The higher they went, the more they realized that the wind outside the mountain was very slow. It was so slow that it was as if it never blew. But when combined with the subtle distance that the clouds moved for a long time, they could feel the existence of the wind. There was an invisible boundary between Qi Yunshan and himself that separated two different kinds of time. They reached the top of the mountain. The top of Qi Yunshan was mostly bare, but there was a tree. This tree was very big, occupying almost a third of the top of the mountain. But the strange thing was that when they were at the foot of the mountain, or even the mountainside, they could not see this tree at all. It was as if it suddenly grew out after they reached the top of the mountain and grew into their sight. The seven-colored flag cloud carriage stopped in front of this tree. When they looked up, its branches seemed to connect to the sky. It was quite a spectacular sight. This could not be called a magical tree, right? The magical fruit grew on this tree? Jiang Wang secretly thought in his heart. If the magical tree was so big, then the magical fruit should have at least 100 or 200 fruits. As if sensing Jiang Wang's thoughts, the tree suddenly shook violently. That giant tree suddenly shook violently, and a terrifying aura burst out. A dignified and deep voice sounded, I am the mountain guardian spirit. Chapter 648. A giant talking tree. Its aura was terrifying and oppressive. A demon? Was there such a huge monster on top of the mysterious Qiyun Mountain? Mount Qiyun was obviously the land of inheritance of human cultivators. How could there be a demon on the land of inheritance of human cultivators? And a mountain guardian? What was a mountain guardian? Jiang Wang stepped forward and subconsciously shielded Yi Qingyu behind him, even though they were still under the protection of the seven-colored flag cloud carriage. Just the huge size of this mountain guardian alone was enough to inspire awe. If there was a dispute, he had no confidence in winning. Mountain guardian, sir, we have no intention of offending you. Jiang Wang loudly admitted defeat. But after the giant tree shook, it calmed down. There was no response, nor did it take any further action. Sir? Sir? Jiang Wang whispered a few probing words, but there was still no response. It seemed that the mountain guardian had only awakened for a short while. Jiang Wang turned his head and asked Yi Qingyu, Do you know what this is? Yi Qingyu controlled the seven-colored flag cloud carriage to slowly retreat. I've never heard of a mountain guardian. Yi Lingxiao really didn't say anything about the situation on Mount Qiyun. Was he careless, or did he have other plans? In ancient times, the mountain guardian was the spirit that guarded the mountain gate. It was a rank and identity, and had to be formally conferred and recognized by heaven and earth. Jiang Yan's voice sounded in the candle. Only a truly large sect had the qualifications and ability to confer the title of a mountain guardian. It was rare that he didn't wait for Jiang Wang to ask and took the initiative to explain. Jiang Yin was listless in the Seven Stars Pavilion's secret realm, and even seemed to have fallen into a deep sleep. There was a long period of silence, but he was so energetic in the secret realm of Mount Qian. Did this mean that Mount Qian was still in the modern world, even if it had a different flow of time? You mean Mount Qian is the residence of a large sect with a legacy from ancient times? Jiang Wang asked. Here, your harvest may be beyond imagination. Jiang Yan's voice had a hint of expectation. He seemed to be particularly interested in Mount Qian and was deliberately guiding. Jiang Wang suppressed all kinds of guesses in his heart. He had to be patient and vigilant with Jiang Yan. Then he asked Yi Qingyu, "Didn't your skylark find a magical fruit before? Where is it?" Yun Xiaoer saw it. "It's right behind this big tree on a branch." Yi Qingyu said, "Could it be that this tree was really a divine tree? Tree demon? That was unlikely. If there really was an existence like the divine tree demon in this world, all the top forces would definitely fight over it and think of ways to raise it in captivity. How could they have never heard of it?" The heavenly Tao was flawed, and the divine ability fruit was already a rare treasure. If it grew on a tree, and the tree itself had spiritual intelligence, and was born as a tree demon, how powerful would it be? Was he born with countless divine powers? That kind of strength was simply unimaginable. One had to know that the limit of a cultivator's inner palace was the heavenly palace, and having all 5 divine abilities was already the limit. That was an almost insurmountable gap. If a race like the tree demons really existed, the outcome of the ancient war would have been changed. Jiang Wang was more inclined to believe that the magical fruit was only stored in the mountain guardian spirit. The problem now was that the mountain guardian spirit had stopped moving. Was that a warning? Or is it starting to fall silent again? But I can't just wait like this. Once the outcome of the battle at the guest pavilion was decided, the divine ability fruit here would change. Let's see if I can pluck it. Jiang Wang thought for a moment and made a hand seal, and the pitch-black chain drilled out of the void. The divine ability fruit was on this unknown mountain guardian spirit, and Jiang Wang certainly couldn't rashly pluck it, but there was no harm in trying with the chains of imprisonment. If it worked, then it worked. If it didn't, then he would think of another way. Yi Qingyu controlled the skylark to guide the chains of imprisonment while holding on tightly to the green flag. She planned to immediately escape on the cloud carriage with the rainbow flag if anything went wrong. The chains of imprisonment drilled out of the void and circled behind the giant mountain guardian spirit. Stop! Suddenly, a loud shout sounded. A formation plate hidden underground suddenly shone brightly, and an ancient light gate appeared out of thin air above the formation plate. Domian jumped out of the light gate. His right hand raised the saber and slashed down, bringing with it a ray of saber light. Clang! The saber light collided with the chains of imprisonment. This was a saber with an exaggeratedly large blade. 2/3 of the blade protruded out. The shape of the saber was fierce, and it looked fierce and heavy. With just a casual swing of the saber, it seemed to have divided the 2 sides, and the chains of imprisonment couldn't move an inch. It turned out that Domian had already arrived at the top of the mountain, but for some reason, he didn't pluck the divine ability fruit. Instead, he placed a formation plate here that could be used for teleportation to prevent the divine ability fruit from being taken away. And he himself rushed to the small pavilion in the south of the mountain to look for something. At this moment, Domian glared at Jiang Wang. "What do you want to do?" "Once the divine ability fruit is plucked, Qi Yunshan's time is about to end." "Qi Yunshan's time is about to end. What does that mean?" Jiang Wang frowned and asked. At this moment, an old voice sounded behind him. "Are you pretending not to know? Or are you pretending not to know?" At some point, Elder Yunyu had also arrived at the top of the mountain. He and Domian were both prepared and arrived at the top of the mountain almost at the same time. They restrained each other and left countermeasures. Then they searched for the secret according to the clues they had. On the other hand, Jiang Wang and Yi Qingyu did waste a lot of time because they knew nothing about Qi Yunshan. Because they tried to pluck the divine ability fruit first, it seemed to have aroused the hostility of both sides at the same time. Jiang Wang held the sword in his hand and turned to stare at Elder Yunyu. So what if we really don't know? So what if we pretend not to know? He didn't want to explain it all, and there was no need to explain. Everyone had their own needs in Qi Yunshan. This was a struggle involving fundamental interests. This was not a contradiction that could be solved by sitting down and discussing. Whoever showed hostility first, he would attack first. It was simple and violent. Elder Yunyu's face was hidden under the bamboo hat, and his voice was trembling. The Cabinet of Cloud is really domineering. Are you trying to overturn the chessboard, just like Yi Lingxiao did 33 years ago? I don't know what cabinet master you did 33 years ago, but you can pile on me as a target. Jiang Wang pulled out his long sword. He looked at Dou Mian and then at Elder Yunyu. At most, you two will come together. What do I have to fear? Yi Qingyu frowned slightly. She didn't know what her father did 33 years ago, but she was very dissatisfied with this gloomy Elder Yunyu. No matter how old Elder Yunyu's voice was, if he could enter Qi Yunshan, it meant that he must be under 33 years old. That was Yi Lingxiao's junior. And when he talked about Yi Lingxiao, his tone was contemptuous and without respect. Hearing Jiang Wang's statement, Yi Qingyu directly took out 2 ink-colored cubes from the storage jade pendant and threw them into the air. The cubes quickly expanded in the air. Swish, 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 swish. 4 wings spread out. Black helmet, black armor, black blade, black crystal eyes, floating in the air, indifferently facing Elder Yunyu. 4-winged ink warrior. Back in the 7 Stars world, Tian Yong of the Tian family had a double-winged ink warrior. It was already very precious and was not willing to use it easily. The double-winged ink warrior had the battle power of the soaring dragon realm, and the 4-winged ink warrior had the battle power of the intermansion realm. Yi Qingyu took out 2 at once. Jiang Wang was originally cold and not afraid to fight 1 against 2. He felt that he was quite heroic, but after Yi Qingyu threw out the 2 4-winged ink warriors, he suddenly felt like he was bullying others. Chapter 649. What a Dugawudi! His name is tough, his temper is tough, and so is his confidence. You killed Jiao Xiong, and now you think there's no one else in the world? Dou Mian stepped forward with his sword. I'd like to see how you can fight 2 people at the same time. He was even more indignant than Yun Yuang, who was facing Jiang Wang. Of course, part of it was because of his pride that he could not bear to be looked down upon, but more of it was because he saw Yi Qingyu throw out 2 4-winged ink warriors. The ink sect was famous for its expensive items. His Dou family was also a famous family in the Chu kingdom. As one of the most outstanding disciples of the Dou family, he couldn't casually buy 2 4-winged ink warriors as guards. At this time, Yi Qingyu and Jiang Wang were riding the carriage with the 7-colored flag, commanding the 4-winged ink warriors. They were rich and powerful. No matter how confident he was in himself, he didn't want to have a fair fight with Dugawudi in this situation. You send 2 ink warriors to stop Dou Mian. I'll get off the carriage first and deal with the Cloud Traveler. Jiang Wang transmitted his voice to Yi Qingyu. He was always vigilant against the mysterious Cloud Traveler and wanted to deal with him first. After the Cloud Traveler asked that question, he didn't say a word. It was as if he was meditating, but there was a faint white gas coming out of his head. The 3 sides had their own plans, and the situation was about to break out. At this moment, the giant tree suddenly shook violently. I am the Mountain Guardian Spirit. The sudden movement of the Mountain Guardian Spirit surprised Jiang Wang, and then he frowned. Why did it say the same thing? This was not normal. Did the Mountain Guardian Spirit have no intelligence? Or was it confused and stupid? Dou Mian obviously knew more and shouted, There's not much time left. Let's work together to deal with the Lingxiao Pavilion. The Cloud Traveler also knew Qi Yunshan's situation very well. He walked forward with a strange smile. Okay, Before the first wave subsided, another wave came. Just as the battle was about to start, a scream came from the foot of the mountain. The scream was so shrill that it echoed far away. It swept over Qi and Shan in an instant, so that the four people on the top of the mountain could hear it clearly. It was the inheritor of the ethereal palace, Zhong Qin. Previously, when he was exploring the gazebo in the mountain with Do Mian was anxious to stop Jiang Wang from picking the magical fruit, so he rushed to the top of the mountain alone. However, he left Zhong Qin to continue exploring and make preparations. But now, something was wrong with the pavilion in the mountains. Or rather, something had changed. Jiang Wang did not move his sword. He only looked at Do Xing and said, "Your companion is in trouble. Aren't you going to take a look? Life and death is her own fate." "What's there to see?" Do Xing did not even turn his head. He only said, "Elder Yunyu, are you still not going to make a move?" Hee. Old Cloud Traveler suddenly smiled and said, "Why don't you deal with High Heaven Pavilion here, while I help you see how Zhong Qin is doing?" Doverin did not respond, but quietly adjusted his posture. Originally, it was Do Mian and Yun Yoing who were targeting Jiang Wang together. Now, the three sides were wary of each other. From their conversation, it was obvious that Do Mian was trying to hide something. He wanted to provoke a fight, and then he would create a diversion and suddenly rush back to the pavilion in the mountains. However, Old Cloud Traveler saw through it and decisively stopped him. Jiang Wang did not know what Do Mian and Old Cloud Traveler were looking for, but it did not prevent him from making the corresponding judgment. Since everyone is worried, he said, "Why don't we go to the place where Zhong Qin is in trouble?" Do Mian glanced at Old Cloud Traveler and took the lead to answer, "Okay." Old Cloud Traveler thought for a while and nodded in agreement. "But before you leave, you have to remove the means you set up at the top of the mountain." Jiang Wang stared at them and said, "Otherwise, if you can't win against me and suddenly come back to take the magical fruit and in the time, won't we be caught unprepared? You have such fast means, but we don't." Jiang Wang did not know beforehand that the time to take the magical fruit would end at Qi Yunshan. However, with the help of the information revealed by Do Mian, the conversation was very natural. In Do Mian and Old Cloud Traveler's knowledge, there were two places in Qi Yunshan where the secret order to enter and exit the Cloud Top Asgard was hidden. One was in the pavilion in the south of the mountain, and the other was in the pool in the north of the mountain. They had all come for the Cloud Top Immortal Palace, not just for the Divine Power Fruit. Jiang Wang's words at this time further confirmed their previous judgment. They previously thought that Jiang Wang and Yi Qingyu saw that they could not snatch it from them. So they simply snatched the magical fruit, ended Qi Yunshan's time, and waited for the next 33 years. Do Mian sneered, "Your chariot probably won't be much slower. You better have some sincerity." Jiang Wang replied with an unhappy expression, "In terms of flying speed, do you think we can surpass you?" Anyway, it was a fact that Do Mian and Old Cloud Traveler arrived at the top of the mountain first. Jiang Wang said this with confidence. "Okay." Old Cloud Traveler slowly made a gesture and withdrew the means he set up at the top of the mountain. The means he set up at the top of the mountain were not as fast as Do Mian. It was certainly a good thing to have Do Mian offset it. Jiang Wang and Old Cloud Traveler reached an agreement. Do Mian knew that it was useless to refuse, so he agreed directly. The three parties monitored and guarded against each other. They maintained a relatively consistent speed and rushed to the pavilion in the south of the mountain together. For Do Mian and Old Cloud Traveler, Zhong Qin's scream undoubtedly indicated that something happened at the pavilion in the south of the mountain. They were not afraid of anything, but they were afraid of nothing. Zhong Qin might have triggered some kind of prohibition or some kind of mechanism. Correspondingly, the secret order of the Cloud Top Asgard should have surfaced. So they were itching and very eager. For Jiang Wang, at this time, he was not 100% confident like before entering the mountain. The strength of these people who participated in Qi Yunshan was beyond his expectations. He was not sure if he could kill Old Cloud Traveler before Do Mian defeated the four-winged Ink Warrior and the carriage with the 7-colored flag. The fact proved that Jiao Xiong, who took the lead to block the road and said that he wanted to fight against the 3 of them, was actually the weakest party among the 4. So Jiang Wang was willing to go with him to the pavilion in the south of the mountain to have a look to avoid starting a fight now. He was not afraid of himself, but he did not want Yi Qingyu to take the risk. Yi Qingyu was also very astute. She stayed in the carriage and did not come out. The 2 4-winged ink warriors flew on her left and right, maintaining a protective posture. The 4-winged ink warriors completely used 10,000 yuan stones as the source of power. Every breath they took, they consumed a huge amount of Dao Yuan stones. In this kind of time, when there was no need to fight, maintaining a dormant posture was the most thrifty way. Even if they stopped in the carriage and did not fly, they could still save a lot of Dao Yuan stones. Jiang Wang tried very hard not to let himself persuade her. In the face of Yi Qingyu, who came from a wealthy family, it was actually very difficult to persuade her to be thrifty, because she might already be very thrifty. It was just that the gap between the rich and the poor was too big, and the concept of thriftiness was completely different. Jiang Wang, Yi Qingyu, Do Mian, Old Cloud Traveler. Unknowingly, of the 7 people who entered Qi Yunshan, there were now only 4 left. Except for Yi Qingyu, who had a pile of life-saving treasures. The remaining 3 people all had absolute confidence in their own strength. The 4 of them quickly arrived at the pavilion in the south of the mountain. Here, they saw an unforgettable scene. Chapter 650. Zhong Qin was still alive. Zhong Qin, who was wearing a gorgeous dress, was still there. She was no longer screaming, but everyone who saw her would rather she could make a sound. Any kind of sound, screaming, cursing, crying, it was better than her being so silent and calm now. She floated above the half-collapsed pavilion in the mountain, as if she was shackled there by invisible shackles. She was expressionless. Starting from her calf, she disappeared piece by piece. Everyone present could feel her vitality and knew clearly that she was still alive. But she didn't resist or struggle. Or did she resist? She was like a painting hanging on the wall that was torn off by some force. She was like an abrupt stain in the air that was slowly wiped off by a rag. What kind of power was this? What did she trigger? What happened here? Do Mian, who came to Qi Yunshan with Zhong Qin, Jiang Wang, and Elder Yunyu, were all motionless. This kind of power was beyond their imagination. They were all cultivators who had experienced countless fierce battles. Even if Zhong Qin was chopped into pieces in front of them, they wouldn't even frown. But this kind of scene of being wiped off abruptly had a kind of cold and silent, terrible cruelty. The most terrible thing was the unknown. They didn't know what kind of power was destroying Zhong Qin. Of course, there was no way to save her. Do Mian's fingers twitched a few times. He wanted to pull out his saber, the famous saber of Chu called Tianyi. But he couldn't stop that kind of power from continuing. He couldn't even be sure whether that kind of power would spread back and wipe him out too. So he could only stay still. What kind of power is this? Jiang Wang asked Jiang Yin in the Tongtian Palace. But Jiang Yin was silent, as if he was also shocked by this scene. Zhong Qin's entire body disappeared, not even leaving behind a trace of her aura, as if she had never appeared. There was only a broken pavilion in the mountain in front of them. The top of the pavilion didn't exist. 2 of the 4 pillars had collapsed. The broken walls were almost clear at a glance. No matter how they looked at it, it didn't look like there were any secrets hidden here. Do Mian had been searching here for a long time, and Zhong Qin was directly wiped out in front of them. What happened here? Elder Yunyu was the first to ask. At this moment, the 3 parties present were on guard against each other. In fact, none of them knew what was happening in front of them, but at the same time, they were not sure if the other 2 parties were aware of the situation. After all, everyone had their own fate, and every sect had their own inheritances. Objectively speaking, Do Mian was the first to choose this place to explore. Obviously, he should be more familiar with the situation of this small pavilion in the mountains. Do Mian glared at Jiang Wang. I didn't have time to do anything here, and they were already trying to pick the magical fruit at the top of the mountain. He was not a person who was easily angered, but the scene of Zhongqin being suddenly erased had greatly shaken his mind. Jiang Wang didn't want to argue with him. He only said, "Looks like I saved your life. Maybe I should thank you." Do Mian quickly suppressed his emotions and said while raising his saber. Although Do Mian claimed that he didn't do anything in the pavilion, Jiang Wang and Elder Yunyu didn't believe him. Something must have happened here to trigger such a consequence. The strange scene of Zhongqin being erased undoubtedly indicated that there must be a secret here. It was just that they couldn't see it now. Even if Do Mian left in a hurry, Zhongqin, who stayed here, must have done something. Everyone was using their own methods to observe the situation. At this time, Jiang Wang heard Yi Qingyu's voice. "If there is a change, no matter what it is, I will control the cloud carriage and leave. We will go directly to the top of the mountain to grab the magical fruit. The situation here is beyond my expectations. There may be unknown dangers. Sky Tower doesn't lack anything, so we don't need to take this risk. A secret that could make Do Mian and Elder Yunyu so nervous must be a very important secret, and it must be much more precious than the magical fruit. And Yi Qingyu could decisively make a choice, only the magical fruit. This kind of determination and decisiveness was very rare. Of course, perhaps Sky Tower doesn't lack anything was the biggest reason to cut off the greed in their hearts." Jiang Wang also breathed a sigh of relief. He came with Yi Qingyu, so of course he respected Yi Qingyu's opinion. No matter what was hidden in the small pavilion in the mountains, no matter how dangerous it was, since they didn't list it as their primary goal, there was no need to be too concerned. "How about letting my ink warriors try?" In the silence of the three parties restraining each other, Yi Qingyu spoke. "Okay." "No." Elder Yunyu and Do Mian almost spoke at the same time, but their attitudes were different. Jiang Wang looked at Do Mian. "Then what do you want to do? Are we going to keep waiting here?" Elder Yunyu also didn't speak, waiting for Do Mian's answer. He looked like he was going to sit on top of the mountain and watch the tigers fight. Do Mian coldly said, "I'd rather keep waiting like this until Qi Yunshan closes. It's better than the secret order of Cloud Top Immortal Palace falling into your hands." After all, the four-winged ink warriors were not living creatures. They could explore the pavilion without fear of sacrifice, but they didn't dare to see the scene of Zhongqin disappearing. But if the secret order really appeared at this time, after the ink warriors got it, they might not be able to get it back. This was why Do Mian didn't agree. Cloud Top Immortal Palace. Jiang Wang looked at Yi Qingyu and saw the same question. Neither of them knew about the existence of Cloud Top Immortal Palace, but they could guess why Do Mian and Elder Yunyu were so nervous. Even if Cloud Top Immortal Palace is closed forever? Jiang Wang asked. He picked up the information he just learned and used it against Do Mian, trying to squeeze more information out of him. Even so, Do Mian's attitude was tough, and his voice was powerful. Jiang Wang and Yi Qingyu looked at each other and restrained themselves. They had a plan, and it didn't matter if they waited. There was no need to anger Do Mian at this time and cause a fight. But at this time, Elder Yunyu slowly said, "But I don't want to wait anymore." He spoke slowly, and his movement of raising his hand was also slow, just like a real old man, old and weak. But he raised his hand and pressed it in front of him. Buzz! There was a dull vibration, a circle of faint ripples, with him as the center, spread out and quickly invaded the others present. Jiang Wang and Yi Qingyu were both in the seven-colored flag cloud carriage. Yi Qingyu pointed at the blue flag with a seal, and the light blue light shield covering the seven-colored flag cloud carriage immediately turned dark blue. The circle of translucent ripples didn't try to invade the seven-colored flag cloud carriage. Instead, it expanded into a wider translucent light shield, covering the entire dark blue light shield. Instead, it trapped Jiang Wang and Yi Qingyu. At the same time, Do Mian waved the Tianyu blade. The blade was fierce, and it had the power to split mountains. It directly cut the translucent ripples. But this blade seemed to cut into cotton, and it didn't exert any force. The translucent ripples seemed to be very elastic, and it extended infinitely along the blade of the Tianyo blade. The rest of the ripples were still closed, covering Dome Mian in it. Elder Yinyu restrained the two sides with one move, and he stepped into the pavilion with a strength that was different from before. He used some method to confirm that there was no more danger in the pavilion, and he was the first to enter the pavilion. Chapter 651. As soon as Elder Yinyu stepped into the small pavilion, there was a sudden burst of colorful lights. Countless grotesque, broken images flashed, as if they had recorded something, but nothing could be seen clearly if one looked closely. Old man Yinyu disappeared in an instant. His disappearance was clearly not erased like Zhongqin's. Instead, he had entered a mysterious place. His remaining breath was still there, and there was even Dao Yuan dissipating. But Zhongqin was completely gone, and there was nothing left. After Elder Yinyu disappeared, a wonderful change happened. The broken pavilion in the mountains seemed to be repaired by some kind of power. The pillars of the pavilion were propped up, the eaves were connected, and the benches grew. It was as good as new in an instant. An ancient-looking pavilion stood at the side of the mountain path. There was a plaque hanging on the pavilion, and the words "Guest Pavilion" were written on it. There were two pillars in front of the pavilion, and a couplet was engraved on it. The left said, "Welcome friend from all over the world." The right said, "Welcome friend from all over the world." Jiang Wang could not help but praise in his heart. How bold! These words were all written by Dao, and one did not need to be literate to understand the meaning. To welcome guests from all over the world. Which ordinary sect would dare to post such a couplet? Perhaps this guest pavilion belonged to the cloud-top immortal palace that Dome Mian mentioned before. As for old Cloud Traveler, he had probably entered a space related to the guest pavilion. If he was not mistaken, the secret order should be in there as well. But he did not know where the power came from, why Zhongqin was erased, and why Elder Yunyu was safe and sound now. Thinking about these, Jiang Wang did not make a move and only paid attention to Dome Mian's movements. The first place that Dome Mian explored was the guest pavilion, and he would not allow Elder Yunyu to take the benefits in front of him. Jiang Wang did not take any action for the time being. Yi Qingyu made a hand gesture and sent the green flag into the cloud chariot. The cloud chariot with the seven-colored flag suddenly raised its crown. Upon closer inspection, it was not a crown, but a big tree. The big tree shook, and countless green leaves flew out. The green leaves were like knives, rushing out of the cloud carriage with the seven colors flag, and continuously cutting the translucent light shield left by Elder Yunyu. But the progress was difficult. Dome Mian glanced at this side indifferently and put the Amano blade back in front of him. The translucent light shield that seemed to be able to extend infinitely also retracted as if it had a mind of its own. It refused to clash with the Amano blade, but it still firmly covered Dome Mian. The tricks left behind by Elder Cloud Traveler were indeed not easy to deal with. This was probably the reason why he had the confidence to make the first move. He was confident that this method would be able to trap his opponent for a period of time, allowing him to leisurely reap the rewards. Dome Mian held the saber in his right hand horizontally in front of him, and his left palm was placed on the back of the saber. Just like that, the Amano blade was pulled horizontally across. Jiang Wang seemed to have heard a cracking sound, but he didn't seem to have heard anything. However, the translucent light shield that enveloped Dome Mian collapsed just like that. On the other side, the flying leaf knife of the seven-colored flag cloud chariot was still struggling against the translucent light barrier. It seemed like it would continue for some time. "Do you need help?" Dome Mian stood in the air and asked with his sword in hand. "Thank you very much," Jiang Wang hurriedly replied. Doqin no longer had any misgivings. He turned around and stepped into the guest pavilion. He temporarily left the two from High Heaven Pavilion here. He wanted to use his understanding of the guest pavilion to deal with Elder Cloud Traveler first. He wanted to find the secret order of Cloud Top Immortal Palace and seize the inheritance of Cloud Top Immortal Palace. All the information about the guest pavilion that ethereal palace had been exploring over the years was all in his mind. Although Zhongqin's death was an accident, it wasn't like there hadn't been a similar situation in history. Ethereal Palace didn't have a way to deal with that strange power, nor did they know the origin of that power. They only vaguely guessed that it might be some kind of protection left behind by Cloud Top Immortal Palace. However, they also knew that this kind of power was appearing less and less frequently. After erasing Zhongqin, it would take at least 100 years before it would appear again. It might even never appear again. He was hesitant and angry before, because it was the first time he had seen that kind of power. He didn't know what to do, and at the same time, he wanted to confuse the other two competitors. However, he didn't expect that Elder Cloud Traveler would be more decisive than him and directly take the initiative. He was already one step behind, and now he couldn't waste any more time. How could he help the two from High Heaven Pavilion get out? Asking this question was just to test how long the two from High Heaven Pavilion would be trapped. As soon as Dong Mion's figure disappeared, Jiang Wang immediately reached out to the dark blue light shield of the seven-colored flag cloud carriage and ignited the Samadhi True Fire. The seven-colored flag cloud carriage hadn't finished its blade-like flying leaves, but had already lost its target. The translucent light shield that trapped them had disappeared. The translucent light shield left behind by Elder Cloud Traveler was a first-class trapping technique. It was extremely tough and could be extended along with the blade. It was a secret technique specially developed for trapping people, and it was difficult to break. He had seen Do Mion's blade clearly. Do Mion's blade didn't directly destroy Elder Cloud Traveler's light shield, but to some extent, it cut through the foundation of the light shield. It could even be said that it cut open the space temporarily. Although it was only for a moment, the light shield had nothing to rely on and thus collapsed. Jiang Wang's method at this time was different, but the result was the same. He directly used the Samadhi True Fire to burn the space, so the translucent light shield had no place to rely on and collapsed. The Cloud Top Immortal Palace they mentioned. Are you sure you don't want to try? Jiang Wang held the Samadhi True Fire and asked aloud. We have only just heard of the name Cloud Top Immortal Palace, and there is no advantage to speak of. It is not wise to have an unintentional fight against an intentional fight. Yi Qingyu controlled the green flag and retracted the blade-like flying leaves as she said, why don't we directly go and get the supernatural fruit and end the competition? Yi Qingyu was a determined person, and once she had decided on something, she wouldn't change it easily. Jiang Wang was just casually asking, and he agreed with Yi Qingyu's judgment. Moreover, he was very uneasy about the power that directly erased Zhongqin. The two of them abandoned the mysterious Cloud Top Immortal Palace, and the seven-colored flag cloud carriage directly changed direction. The green flag unfolded, and they returned to the top of the mountain at the fastest speed. Without Do Mion and Elder Cloud Traveler's restraint, the seven-colored flag cloud carriage's speed was at its maximum, and it flew past the roadside and the mountain scenery. When they returned to the top of the mountain, the huge mountain guardian spirit was still standing there. The giant tree towered into the sky, and they couldn't see the end of it, but there was no more movement. Jiang Wang tried to fly out of the mountain and went around to observe. Sure enough, he found a translucent fruit behind the giant tree. It was worth mentioning that this fruit was indeed attached to the branch, but it wasn't the kind of attachment that grew on the tree. It was more like it was being held by the branch. A more vivid analogy was that the mountain guardian spirit was holding its hand behind its back, hiding it behind its back. It was like a child hiding something he loved. The mountain guardian spirit didn't make any more movements, which gave Jiang Wang considerable courage. He quickly made a gesture, and the chains of imprisonment drilled out of the void, circled behind the mountain guardian spirit, and held out the translucent fruit. There was no obstruction at all, and it was unbelievably easy. Two pitch-black chains intertwined to form a concave disc that looked like a bowl. The translucent fruit was in the middle, and it had an ancient and mysterious aura. Was this the fruit of the divine power? From his fruit, Jiang Wang felt an aura similar to the seed of the divine power. Jiang Wang controlled the chains of imprisonment and presented the fruit in front of Yi Qingyu. "Have a taste," he said with a smile. This was originally the moment of harvest, and both Jiang Wang and Yi Qingyu were already feeling the victory of the trip to Qi Yunshan. They made a decisive choice, and they also found the harvest they wanted. But in the next moment, right in front of them, the huge mountain guardian spirit that occupied 1/3 of the mountain top suddenly collapsed. It originally had a clear appearance, and it had a substantial pressure, but now it was as ethereal as an illusion, and it disappeared easily. It was as if it was destroyed in an instant by some kind of power. Chapter 652. The huge mountain guardian spirit collapsed, but as if in its last struggle, there was still a lingering voice echoing. "I am the mountain guardian, the mountain guardian, the guardian." It was intermittent, and in the end there was no sound. The towering giant tree that occupied 1/3 of the top of the mountain suddenly disappeared in front of them. For a moment, Yi Qingyu even forgot to take the magical fruit. The mountain guardian spirit was destroyed long ago. It was this magical fruit that supported its afterimage. After all, Jiang Wang had some understanding of illusions. At this time, he also found some clues and analyzed, and what we saw was the final scene of its destruction. Qi Yunshan's time anomaly should have happened in the past. It was just an afterimage, but the pressure seemed to be substantial. For a time, Jiang Wang and Yi Qingyu thought that the mountain guardian spirit really existed and raised their guard. How strong was such a huge mountain guardian spirit at its peak? But it was destroyed with one blow. How terrifying was the existence that destroyed the mountain guardian spirit? What was its origin? What happened in Qi Yunshan's past? Perhaps the breeding of the magical fruit is not the meaning of Qi Yunshan's existence. Qi Yunshan only used 33 years to condense one magical fruit to maintain one opportunity. Yi Qingyu followed and analyzed. That's why Do Mian said that once the magical fruit is plucked, Qi Yunshan's time will end. The magical fruit is now in our hands. So, do you want to wait and see where Qi Yunshan's real opportunity is, or end his time in advance? Jiang Wang asked her. If it were you, what would you choose? Yi Qingyu asked back. Jiang Wang smiled. The bowl may be snatched, the pot may be overturned, but what is eaten into the stomach is yours. Great minds think alike. Yi Qingyu smiled sweetly and reached out to grab the magical fruit. She did not hesitate. The magical fruit was the purpose of her trip. The translucent fruit fell in her hand and suddenly changed. The cloud-like pattern spread and stretched on the fruit's skin. There were also clouds in the fruit's flesh. In a flash, this translucent fruit had turned into a white fruit with clouds and mist. It was extremely beautiful. It seems to be approaching me, Yi Qingyu murmured. Jiang Wang, who was watching from the side, pondered silently. As expected, divine ability was the root of every cultivator and could not be bestowed by the outside world. Even the divine ability fruit, a legendary treasure that could grant divine abilities upon consumption, could not directly bestow divine abilities. Instead, it would change according to the person who came into contact with it. In essence, it was still drawing out the potential of the cultivator's own divine abilities. Then with Yi Lingxiao's cultivation of Yi Qingyu, what was her hidden magical power potential? Try it and see how it tastes, Jiang Wang urged. Even at such a critical moment, Yi Qingyu could not help but roll her eyes at him. What I'm asking for now is divine abilities. Divine abilities are things that determine the level of the inner palace. You're asking me what they taste like? This was the root of Jiang Ainan's gluttony. Then, she gently opened her cherry lips and placed the fruit near her mouth. Clouds and mist surged around the magical fruit. Her red lips and white flesh complemented each other. With just a light bite, the entire fruit scattered into clouds and was sucked in. Yi Qingyu's eyes were slightly closed. She stood on the carriage with the 7-color flag. Her naturally hanging hair danced without wind. Clouds and mist flowed around her, floating up and down like a fairy. Beside him, Jiang Wang could clearly feel that Yi Qingyu's aura was surging up like water flowing through a canal. The soaring dragon was already complete. Naturally, the inner palace was opened. In the internal changes that outsiders did not know, the divine ability was obtained. There was no brilliant light or shadow. In a kind of light and tranquil atmosphere, Yi Qingyu opened her eyes. Her eyes were extremely beautiful to begin with. They were like fragmentary stars, but right now, they seemed to be covered by a layer of mist and mist. It added a bit of emotion to her eyes. "How is it?" Jiang Wang asked. Yi Qingyu smiled. Her voice was like a mountain spring, flowing sweetly. "It tastes good." Seeing Jiang Wang's helpless face, she stopped smiling and said seriously, "The seed of divine ability I plucked is called Cloud Seal." She stopped halfway because there was another change at the top of the mountain. The body of the mountain guarding spirit was a towering giant tree. It occupied 1/3 of the top of the mountain and reached into the depths of the clouds, as if it reached the sky. After the mountain guarding spirit collapsed, the world seemed to be empty. After Yi Qingyu completely absorbed the fruit and achieved the inner palace, there was a huge hole in the sky above the top of Mount Qian. And then the flowing clouds that were originally slow outside, the mountain gathered very quickly like swimming fish condensing and changing. Finally, layers of cloud stairs were formed. When Yi Qingyu came directly from the secret place of Lingxiao to Yunqing, there were also clouds and mist stairs. But compared with the scene in front of her, it seemed a lot smaller, because the cloud stairs in front of her seemed to go straight to the sky. In the welcoming guest pavilion in the south of the mountain, Do Mian stepped in and the scene changed. He thought that the welcoming guest pavilion was connected to some space, but when he reappeared, he found that he was still in Mount Qian. To be precise, it was Mount Qian from many years ago. The quaint pavilion stood on a mountain road. The pavilion said, "Welcoming guest." The couplet in front of the pavilion said, "Welcoming fellow Taoists from all over the world." There were many people. The originally silent and empty mountain road was now full of people coming and going. Some were naked with strange patterns tattooed on their bodies. Some were wearing rattan clothes with grass leaves on their clothes. Some were wearing stone armor and stepping on the ground like beating drums. People wearing all kinds of strange clothes kept coming and going. Some were shouting loudly. Some were talking and laughing calmly. And some were trembling in fear. But the Tianyo sword in his hand told Do Mian that they were not real. They had existed before, but only in the past. In the vast records of the Do family, there were records of such things. Some scenes in the long history would sometimes be preserved for various reasons. But what was preserved were only scenes, the lost illusions in history. Everything was not real, including the 4 white-clothed Taoist children in front of the welcoming guest pavilion. They smiled reservedly and talked to everyone on the mountain. They either bowed and sent people back, or took out a cloud pattern token from their sleeves and gave it to the guests. Only those who received the cloud pattern token would continue to walk up the mountain. Do Mian walked among them, as if he was witnessing a glorious moment in Mount Qian. As a descendant of a famous family of Great Chu, he would not be too moved by these scenes. He had seen the real glory, so he would not care about the fake prosperity. But this was the past. This was the scene of the past stopped at this moment. And Elder Yinyu was real. The cloud pattern token in the hands of the leftmost Taoist child in front of the welcoming guest pavilion was also real. It emitted a faint wave, which was completely different from the other things in the scene. It really had a connection with the present world. The so-called secret token was only the token to enter the mountain that the cloud-top immortal palace's welcoming guest pavilion gave out. In the past, it should not be precious. But now, after countless years, its value was immeasurable, because it might be able to help the owner open the long-lost cloud-top immortal palace. Chapter 653. Walking in a certain scene of Qi Yunshan's past, Do Mian suddenly rushed forward with a saber. That was because the Cloud Wanderer with the bamboo hat and straw coat had already approached the leftmost Taoist child in white. Only the cloud pattern token in the hands of the Taoist child in white was the only real thing in this scene. Of course, it was also the target of their trip. It was an important token that they had to fight for. The roaring saber intent was like a boiling tornado, crushing everything in its path. The Cloud Wanderer was unable to react in time and was pressed down by the saber mark. From the beginning to the end, Do Mian maintained his invincible confidence. Even if Jiao Xiong was arrogant and despotic, even if Duge Wudi killed Jiao Xiong with one strike, he was the Tianjiao of the Great Chu. A declining country like Yong was nothing in his eyes. A small country like Yun, no matter how rich it was just a fat piece of meat. He didn't need a second strike to kill Jiao Xiong. As for the mysterious Cloud Wanderer, a coward who hid his head but showed his tail, he was not as worthy of attention as Duge Wudi. Even if he had the strength, he didn't care. Cutting through all obstacles, cutting through the afterimages of the past, the Tianyo saber arrived. The saber fell and separated heaven and earth. Life and death were separated by the Tianyo. With a saber mark passed, the people who were cut apart returned to their original state and continued their conversation in another time and space. Only the only real opponent in this scene, the Cloud Wanderer, was frozen in place. The bamboo hat cracked, and the straw coat was cut in half from the middle. An old man with a face full of wrinkles and white hair was revealed. He was really old. His skin was withered and sagging. His eyes were blurry and turbid. There were even age spots on his face. However, the Tianyo saber stopped in front of his forehead. It was blocked by an old finger and couldn't move an inch. The white hair was blown by the saber wind. The Cloud Wanderer looked at Do Mian with his old eyes. His eyes were full of jealousy and hatred. Chu's great scenery is not enough for you to enjoy? Do you have to rack your brains to fight for this inheritance that belongs to me? The Cloud Wanderer in front of him didn't look like a cultivator under the age of 33. He didn't know what method he used to avoid the restriction in enter Qi and Shan. One had to know that even Yi Ling Xiao could not do this. Do Mian's saber was blocked, but he was not surprised. From the fact that Old Man Yin had come to Qi Yin Mountain alone, one could see his confidence. He already knew that Old Man Yin Yu's strength would not be too weak. Even if he was weak, it would not be worth it for him to draw his blade. The Tontian Palace shook, and the inner palace rumbled. The majestic Tao origin that belonged to him surged violently. In the sky, Wild Blade's blade light skyrocketed. No matter who the opponent was, no matter what the opponent was like, he had to suppress them with force and kill them with force. As for Old Man Yunyu, he only placed his second finger. His aura skyrocketed. Previously, outside the guest pavilion, when he formed a seal to trap Do Mian, Jiang Wang, and Yi Qingyu, the cultivation base that he revealed in that instant was only at 2 palaces. Trapping the opponent seemed to be due to the exquisiteness of the Tao technique. And now, the 3 prefectures, the 4 prefectures, the 5 prefectures, the Outer Tower, Azure Dragon, White Tiger, and Vermilion Bird, 3 Starlight, Sacred Towers. Shockingly, he was the one with the highest cultivation on Qiyin Mountain. He had established 3 Saint Towers and was just 1 step away from perfection. Clouds swirled around, and with a flick of 2 fingers, Do Mian was sent flying. Old Man Yunyu did not follow up with another attack. He stretched out his hand to grab the cloud-patterned token in the hands of the white-clothed Taoist child. But when Do Mian was in midair, golden light suddenly shone brightly. He indeed only had 1 palace cultivation base, and his cultivation base was far from enough. But he had plucked the Abijna seed, and it was the inner palace of the Abijna. His confidence did not only come from the sky Wild Blade. The golden light became more and more dazzling, more and more intense, and then it instantly disappeared. Do Mian stood in the air, holding the sky Wild Blade in his hands, and his body was bright gold. His entire person was majestic and dazzling. This Abijna was the battle golden body that only appeared once every 500 years in the Do clan. It was known as indestructible Vajra, immeasurable battle. The Abhijna of the battle golden body was different from the golden body jade essence of the Shunlin realm. The golden body jade essence of the Shunlin realm was to seal one's cultivation base, and until death, it would not retreat. On the other hand, the battle golden body represented absolute defense and terrifying combat potential. Do Mion's battle golden body was activated, and Old Man Yunyu did not hesitate at all. He immediately stopped his hand that was plucking the token and turned around to save himself. Do Mion, who was shining with golden light, slashed with his blade, but Old Man Yunyu's fist struck his abdomen first. Old Man Yunyu's fist was thin and weak, but when the fist struck out, it arrived first, bringing with it a terrifying explosion. Clang! The battle golden body's defense was indeed strong. It was not broken, but Do Mion was still blasted far away. Do Mion, who was still flying backwards, twisted his body and stopped. He did not even frown. Old man, is this all you've got? The sky wild blade slashed forward with crushing force. That ridiculously huge blade head was extremely cold as it slashed forward. This saber strike was straightforward. It was like cutting open one's heart and facing darkness. It was like cutting off all distracting thoughts and facing life and death. Do Clan's secret battle technique, 7 battle styles, cutting nature to see self. You nobles who were born with a silver spoon in your mouth. You should be mocking me for my lack of strength and talent. Old Man Yunyu's voice was low, with an unknown source of resentment. He pressed his palm forward and released the wind seal. In an instant, the wind and clouds surged. The sky wild blade slashed through the wind, met the flowing clouds, shattered the flowing clouds, and created a gale. The wind and clouds overlapped one after another like surging waves, engulfing and drowning one after another. The sky wild blade, which was supposed to be unstoppable, could not cut nature at this moment, let alone see self. It was as if it had fallen into a bottomless swamp with no way out. Do Mion held his blade and was about to turn. Clang! Old Man Yunyu's fist hit his abdomen again, causing his blade to collapse and fly far away. Do Mion was furious and stubbornly raised his blade again. Clang! He was hit again. Clang! 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 The fist fell like rain. For a moment, the whole mountain path was filled with the sound of huge hammers hitting iron. Old Man Yunyu's skinny fist bombarded Do Mion's body again and again, causing him to be unable to even raise his blade. Although the inner mansion of remarkable powers was powerful, to a certain extent, it was almost another level above the ordinary inner mansion. But generally speaking, the remarkable powers of a mansion were weaker than that of an outer mansion. For example, when Lei Zhanxian was a Qianjiao with a powerful remarkable powers, he could only be on par with an outer mansion who had no remarkable powers. When Jiang Wang defeated Hai Zongming, he relied on his comprehensive understanding and targeting, from the environment to the artifacts to the Dao techniques. At this moment, Do Mion and Old Man Yunyu met on a narrow path. Do Mion was a mansion of remarkable powers, while Old Man Yunyu was a third mansion of external mansion. He had a long history, and his secret techniques were profound, so he completely suppressed Do Mion. It's just a mansion. How long can your battle golden body last? Old Man Yunyu seemed to be enraged, and the hatred hidden in his heart was unleashed. He waved his fists and roared. You think I don't know you? You think you're so great just because you're talented? You think you're so great just because you have a family background? I've been planning for so long, and you subdued the ethereal palace just like that. Zhong Qin, that bitch, you abandoned her like a pair of worn-out shoes. I've lost 80 years of my life to be able to suppress you. What have you sacrificed? I wanted to get the inheritance and then deal with you later. But you insist on sending yourself to death now. I'll grant you your wish first. Let's see if you die this time. Die. Die. That you're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.